Chapter 481. The person that arrived was none other than Duan Lingtian that the little gold mouse carried into the sky. Little bastard. You've finally made an appearance. Early on when Duan Lingtian's words sounded out, Zhao Ming's expression had gone completely pale. Now, when he saw Duan Lingtian appear, his face revealed an extremely evil and cold expression, and his eyes flickered with ghastly cold lights. Within the cold lights, killing intent was completely revealed. Idiot! Duan Lingtian stood up on the back of the little gold mouse and looked down at Zhao Ming as he indifferently spat out 2 words. Idiot? As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, Qin Xiang, who stood at the side, was stunned. Even Zhao Ming and the other 2 people by his side were stunned. Besides Zhao Ming, Qin Xiang's group of 3 felt their scalps go numb. Duan Lingtian, a little fellow that hasn't even stepped into the void-prying stage, actually dares to provoke Zhao Ming like this? Little bastard, you're courting death. The origin energy on Zhao Ming's body was protected as terrifying wind concept coiled around his body and emitted waves of terrifying aura. In the sky above him, 13 ancient horned dragon silhouettes condensed into form and coiled down with an oppressive aura. 6th level of the void initiation stage. 5th level wind concept. Presently, Zhao Ming stood there with strands of light azure-colored energy flickering around the origin energy on his entire body, and he seemed to have transformed into a god of wind. Elder Ming. Qin Xiang's face went grim when she saw Zhao Ming intended to make a move against Duan Lingtian. The other 2 people, one is a guardian elder of the former demonic Lotus Blade sect, and the other is a guardian elder of the former Origin Convergence sect. I'm not remembering wrongly, right? Right when Zhao Ming's imposing manner shot into the sky and was about to make a move, Duan Lingtian, who was at the center of the storm, instead had a calm expression, and he looked at the red-clothed old man and green-clothed old man that stood by Zhao Ming's side in a neither fast nor slow manner as he spoke slowly. Duan Lingtian, consider yourself lucky that we weren't able to kill you on the peak of the 7-star sword sect's Dubhe Peak that day. But you'll surely die today, the red-clothed old man said in a deep voice. The green-clothed old man glanced at Duan Lingtian indifferently. His gaze was indifferent, as if he was looking at a corpse. Or perhaps, in his eyes, Duan Lingtian was already a corpse. I originally wanted to share something good with the 2 elders, but since the 2 elders aren't interested, I won't say anything. Just let Zhao Lin kill me. Duan Lingtian opened his mouth unhurriedly again with an expression of a dead pig unafraid of boiling water. Deliberately mystifying things. Zhao Ming's face sank. He disdained Duan Lingtian and raised his hand. His origin energy surged. Whoosh! The concept of wind coiled around him, causing the air to turn sluggish, as if it had been sucked dry. Zhao Ming was about to make a move. A spirit sword that was like rippling autumn water had appeared in Qin Xiang's hand, and her pair of autumn eyes flickered with a heavy sheen. Facing Zhao Ming, she had no confidence at all. Die! Zhao Ming abruptly shouted out explosively as the origin energy in his hand roared and carried 5th level wind concept. The condensed origin energy seemed to have transformed into a wind dragon that opened its bloody mouth and bit towards Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged, and he didn't dodge. Qin Xiang's face went grim as origin energy coiled around the spirit's sword in her hand, and peerlessly sharp sword concept condensed within it as she prepared to make a move. Peak Master Qin Xiang, you don't have to make a move. Right at this moment, a voice transmission entered into Qin Xiang's ears, causing her to be unable to help but be stunned, and then she looked at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian smiled confidently to Qin Xiang. Earlier, it was precisely he who'd sent a voice transmission to Peak Master Qin Xiang. Even though Qin Xiang didn't know where Duan Lingtian's confidence came from, she still chose to believe Duan Lingtian. Right when she was annihilating the origin energy on her spirit sword, the scene before her caused her to be dumbstruck. Bang! Bang! 2 enormous bangs sounded out at practically the exact same time, and they tore through the sky with vast impetus. It was the red-clothed old man and green-clothed old man that had made a move at the same time. 2 strands of thick and material origin energy swept out, accompanied by concept energy to easily stop the attack Zhao Ming executed towards Duan Lingtian. Tanghua, Zhonglin, what's the meaning of this? Zhao Ming's face went grim as he glared angrily at the two old men by his side. If it was Qin Xiang that made a move, he wouldn't be surprised, and he wouldn't take Qin Xiang seriously. After all, Qin Xiang was only a 5th-level void initiation stage martial artist, and she was far inferior to him. But any one of the two old men by his side had strengths that weren't inferior to him. Most importantly, these two old men actually obstructed him from killing Duan Lingtian. He even slightly doubted which side these two old fellows stood on now. Zhao Ming, don't be angry. We're just curious about what good things this Duan Lingtian has to share with us. The red-clothed old man, the guardian elder of the demonic Lotus Blade sect, Tanghua, smiled. Exactly. Zhonglin, the green-clothed old man, and the guardian elder of the Origin Convergence sect nodded as well. Could it be that all of you haven't discerned that he's deliberately mystifying and stalling for time? Zhao Ming's face sank. Elder Ming, could it be that you're afraid this kid will play some tricks before you? Tanghua smiled lightly, and after he appeased Zhao Ming, he looked at Duan Lingtian and asked, Duan Lingtian, you can speak now. Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed as he glanced deeply at Tanghua. Elder Hua is a smart person as expected. Since it's like this, I'll tell all of you. I know a place that has 10,000-year stalactite milk. 10,000-year stalactite milk. As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the expressions of the three old men instantly went grim. Even Qin Xiang also had a dumbstruck look. As figures that stood at the peak of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, they were naturally clearly aware of what 10,000-year stalactite milk was. The milk of the 10,000-year stalactite milk was capable of helping a martial artist improve natural talent to the limit. Most importantly, the 10,000-year stalactite milk didn't have any restrictions, and anyone could consume it. Even if they consumed it, it was similarly effective. They could imagine that if they were able to obtain the 10,000-year stalactite milk and improve their natural talent in the martial Tao to the limit, then breaking through to the 7th level of the void initiation stage was utterly not a difficult thing. Perhaps, when it really came to that time, their goals would change. They wouldn't be attached to the 7th level of the void initiation stage any longer. Perhaps they would consider charging into the void interpretation stage. For a time, the sky was deathly silent. Only waves of heavy breathing could be heard. Duan Lingtian looked calmly at the three old men before him. He knew that these three old fellows were moved. Actually, the situation before him could be said to have been constructed by him after careful consideration. Because he knew that if he didn't do this, then even if he was lucky enough to escape the Crimson Sky Kingdom's imperial city, the people related to him in the Crimson Sky Kingdom like the Divine Might Marquis estate and the Duan clan would surely be unable to escape calamity. This wasn't something he wanted to see happen. So he thought of this method. Duan Lingtian, do you really know where the 10,000-year stalactite milk is? Qin Xiang looked at Duan Lingtian and asked via voice transmission, and her tone contained slight urgency mixed within. Even she couldn't help but be moved by the 10,000-year stalactite milk. Peakmaster Qin Xiang, I indeed know where the 10,000-year stalactite milk is. It's even to the extent that I myself have consumed sufficient 10,000-year stalactite milk, and my natural talent has been improved to the limit of martial artists in Cloud Continent. It isn't just me. Even Ku Air and Little Fei have consumed sufficient 10,000-year stalactite milk just like me, and their natural talent isn't inferior to mine. Duan Lingtian didn't conceal anything and spoke word by word. To Duan Lingtian, the 10,000-year stalactite milk of the 7-star sword sect's Migres Peak was already of no use to him. After all, the 10,000-year stalactite milk that had accumulated there for many years had practically been completely plundered by him. In a short few years, the 10,000-year stalactite milk that had barely dripped down wasn't of much use to him. So long as I'm able to walk out of the foreign lands, I'll be able to once again head to the place where the 10,000-year stalactite milk was located that Samsara Emperor Wu encountered all those years ago. Presently, over 10,000 years have already passed since Samsara Emperor Wu completely plundered the 10,000-year stalactite milk at that place that day. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. Once I find that place, I'll be able to obtain a large amount of 10,000-year stalactite milk. Kerr has consumed the 10,000-year stalactite milk as well? Qin Xiang was dazed. Only now did she realize that there was a reason why the personal disciple she doted on possessed such monstrous natural talent in the martial Tao. Peak Master Qin Xiang. When he saw Zhao Ming's group of 3 were about to recover from their shock, Duan Lingtian didn't dare hesitate and hurriedly sent a voice transmission into Qin Xiang's ears. In a moment, I'll use the 10,000-year stalactite milk as a threat to trick them into leaving the Crimson Sky Kingdom. At that time, I'll have to trouble you to bring along my family, the Divine Might Marquis estate, and the Duan clan members to leave the Crimson Sky Kingdom's imperial city and find a safe place to hide. So long as it's someone related to me, don't leave a single one behind and take all of them away. Besides that, I noticed the passageway that led to the 10,000-year stalactite cave behind the cliff at the side of the peak of Migrez Peak. At the entrance of the cave passageway was a crooked tree that was extremely conspicuous. That place is a good place to cultivate. You can bring Mou to cultivate there. Mou is the personal disciple of the sect leader and the future hope of the 7-Star Sword sect. I'll leave him to you. Duan Lingtian spoke word by word to Qin Xiang. Duan Lingtian, you can't. This is too risky. Qin Xiang discerned that Duan Lingtian's words had the intention of leaving behind his will, and she hurriedly shook her head and refused, unwilling to agree. Peak Master Qin Xiang, we don't have a choice. Don't worry, I might not be in danger. So long as I find an opportunity, I'll completely escape the control of these 3 old fellows and escape from the jaws of death. Duan Lingtian continued speaking via voice transmission. Qin Xiang went silent. She knew that what Duan Lingtian said was true and didn't have the intention of exaggerating. At this time, they indeed didn't have a choice. A single Zhao Ming wasn't in existence she was able to go against. Yet now, there were 2 experts with strengths that weren't inferior to Zhao Ming by Zhao Ming's side, and it caused her to feel a wave of powerlessness. Duan Lingtian, you must survive well. Kerr is still waiting for you. Li Fei is still waiting for you. Chapter 482. When did I become so noble? Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart when he saw Qin Xiang agree, and at the same time, a wisp of self-ridicule couldn't help but appear on his face. Truthfully speaking, if he wanted to flee under the eyes of 3 6th-level Void Initiation Stage experts, it would be impossible. He didn't even have 10% confidence, but he knew that he had to do this. Today, since Zhao Ming's group of 3 had found this place, then he only had 2 choices before him. One of the choices was to die here. Moreover, his loved ones and people related to him might face Zhao Ming's rage. At that time, not only would he die, there might be many people that would be buried with him. The other choice was to draw Zhao Ming's group of 3 away and win a chance to survive. After all, he didn't really plan to bring Zhao Ming's group of 3 to the 10,000-year stalactite cave. These 3 people were all members of the Azure Forest Trisect that had participated in the annihilation of the 7-Star Sword sect, and they could be said to be irreconcilable enemies of his. It was naturally impossible for him to be kind enough to contribute the 10,000-year stalactite cave to them. So, he only wanted to strive for a chance to escape Zhao Ming's group of 3. Moreover, so long as he drew Zhao Ming's group of 3 away, then, as long as his family, his friends, and all the people related to him left with Qin Xiang, they wouldn't be in any danger. This was where his objective lay. Not to mention his group of friends, just his parents were already worthy of him doing this. Mother, you have to live happily with father, Duan Lingtian silently said in his heart. He'd already prepared himself for the worst. Presently, within the enormous courtyard house in the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Imperial City's inner city. In the front courtyard, a group of people stood together with Duan Rufeng and Li Ro in the lead, and they looked up at the sky. Aunt Ro, he'll be fine, right? Xiao Lan stood by Li Ro's side with a worried expression. Her face was slightly pale, and her eyes were filled with tears. Princess Bai Yao stood on the other side of Li Ro and held tightly onto Li Ro's hand, and her palm was already completely drenched in sweat. That brat really has good luck with women. Standing at the side, Duan Rufeng glanced at Xiao Lan and Princess Bai Yao and couldn't help but sigh. He could tell. No matter if it was Xiao Lan or Princess Bai Yao, their concern for their son, Duan Lingtian, came from the bottom of their hearts, without any pretense. Senior brother Duan Lingtian. Imo Yu looked up at the sky and clenched his fists. His face was extremely gloomy. At this moment, he hated himself for being too weak and unable to help Duan Lingtian. Young master. The housekeeper, Jing Ru, bit her lower lip with a worried expression on her face. High up in the sky, behind the clouds, the three guardian elders from the Azure Forest Trisect, Zhao Ming, Tang Hua, and Zhong Lin recovered from their shock, and their gazes descended onto Duan Lingtian in unison. Duan Lingtian, is what you just said true? You've really seen the 10,000-year stalactite milk and know the location of it? Tang Hua looked at Duan Lingtian with a burning gaze. Zhong Lin stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian, and his gaze that seemed to be able to see through everything descended onto Duan Lingtian's face, as if he wanted to see if Duan Lingtian was lying. Duan Lingtian, can you prove that you've really seen the 10,000-year stalactite milk? If you can't, then you're deliberately mystifying things. I think that if you can't prove it, then Tang Hua and Zhong Lin won't obstruct me from killing you. Zhao Ming's eyes flickered with a ferocious light as he spoke word by word. Obviously, even Zhao Ming was moved by the temptation of the 10,000-year stalactite milk. At this moment, he seemed to have tossed the enmity of his son and grandson to the back of his mind, and all he thought about in his heart was the improvement of his natural talent in the martial Tao after consuming the 10,000-year stalactite milk. As far as he was concerned, so long as he consumed the 10,000-year stalactite milk, his natural talent in the martial Tao would improve. Once his natural talent in the martial Tao improved, the final bottleneck of the 6th level of the void initiation stage that had trapped him for many years would be charged through by him in one go. At that time, he would officially step into the 7th level of the void initiation stage, stand at the peak of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and compete for supremacy with the #1 expert of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial family. Now, just thinking about it caused him to feel a wave of excitement in his heart. Exactly. Tang Hua and Zhong Lin nodded when they heard Zhao Ming, and they expressed their attitudes. If you, Duan Lingtian, are unable to prove that you've really seen the 10,000-year stalactite milk, then we won't stop Zhao Ming from killing you. Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised by the request of Zhao Ming's group of three. When he saw the burning gazes of the three of them looking over, Duan Lingtian raised his hand, and a medicinal pill bottle appeared in his hand. Subsequently, he pulled out the stopper of the medicinal pill bottle and turned it around. Drip. A drop of milky white liquid dripped onto the tip of Duan Lingtian's finger, and it flickered with a milky white sheen. A strange aura suffused out from it. It's really the 10,000-year stalactite milk. Although Zhao Ming's group of three hadn't seen the 10,000-year stalactite milk, just the aura that suffused out from this drop of milky white liquid was sufficient to cause the origin energy in their bodies to lightly pulsate, and it caused them to deeply realize that this drop of milky white liquid wasn't simple. Now, they didn't doubt Duan Lingtian's words any longer. Right when the eyes of Zhao Ming's group of three shone, as they looked at the 10,000-year stalactite milk in Duan Lingtian's hand, Duan Lingtian made a move. He suddenly raised his hand. Swish! The 10,000-year stalactite milk in his hand flashed out to flash directly towards Qin Xiang, who stood nearby. Whereas Qin Xiang had been warned by Duan Lingtian via voice transmission earlier, and when she saw Duan Lingtian make a move, she lightly opened her red lips and just happened to catch this drop of 10,000-year stalactite milk. Instantly, a white light flashed on Qin Xiang's body. As expected of the 10,000-year stalactite milk, so miraculous. Qin Xiang felt the medicinal strength of the 10,000-year stalactite milk, and she could clearly feel the circulation of the origin energy in her body become even faster. Kid. You. When they saw Duan Lingtian actually gave the 10,000-year stalactite milk to Qin Xiang, the faces of Zhao Ming's group of three went grim, and they glared angrily at Duan Lingtian. Why are the three of you getting angry? So long as all of you know the location of the 10,000-year stalactite milk, wouldn't all of you be able to obtain as much milk as you want? I'm truly sorry. I left in a hurry the last time, and only a drop of the 10,000-year stalactite milk I brought along remained. Duan Lingtian pretended to sigh, then glanced at the little gold mouse beneath his feet. The rest was eaten by it. The eyes of Zhao Ming's group of 3 flickered with fierce lights, and after they glanced at each other, they seemed to have come to some sort of agreement. Little bastard, bring us to find the 10,000-year stalactite milk. We can leave your corpse intact. Zhao Ming looked at Duan Lingtian and shouted coldly, Corpse intact? Duan Lingtian shook his head and said indifferently, If this is your sincerity, then I think there's no need for us to continue talking. All of you can kill me now. Duan Lingtian had an appearance of, kill if you want, and slice if you want. You. Duan Lingtian's actions caused Zhao Ming's face to go grim, and he said with a dark face, Little bastard, don't push your luck. Push my luck? Duan Lingtian declined to comment. Elder Ming, what you said isn't right. After all, so long as the 3 of you obtain the 10,000-year stalactite milk, then even if all of you aren't young anymore, by relying on the natural talent improved by the 10,000-year stalactite milk, even if all of you aren't young anymore, then even if all of you aren't able to break through to the void transformation stage in your lifetimes, I think it isn't a problem for all of you to break through to the void interpretation stage. Duan Lingtian, what do you want? Speak frankly. Tang Hua spoke directly. Zhong Lin nodded. Exactly. A straightforward person doesn't resort to insinuations. My request is extremely simple. All 3 of you swear that after I bring all of you to the location of the 10,000-year stalactite milk, all of you won't kill me or touch me in the slightest. Otherwise, all of you will be blasted to death by the 99 heavenly tribulation. Duan Lingtian practically spoke word by word. 99 heavenly tribulation. As soon as Duan Lingtian said this, Zhao Ming's face went grim. Even though Tang Hua and Zhong Lin's expressions didn't change, they used their gazes to communicate with each other before agreeing. We can agree. Tang Hua, Zhong Lin, both of you. Zhao Ming's face went grim as he never imagined that Tang Hua and Zhong Lin didn't ask for his opinion before agreeing to such an unreasonable request of Duan Lingtian of their own accord. After all, his son and grandson had died because of Duan Lingtian. He and Duan Lingtian were absolutely irreconcilable. Want him to look on helplessly as Duan Lingtian fled from under his nose? He was unable to do it. Zhao Ming. At practically the exact same time, Zhao Ming received 2 voice transmissions. We've only sworn an oath that we won't kill him. Once he really brings us to the 10,000-year stalactite milk, we'll at most imprison him and bring him back, and we'll let others kill him. In this way, we won't go against our oath, and you'll be able to take revenge for your son and grandson, right? These 2 voice transmissions were precisely transmitted into Zhao Ming's ears by Tang Hua and Zhong Lin. Zhao Ming came to a sudden understanding when he heard this. How about it? Elder Ming, you're unwilling to agree? Duan Lingtian looked at Zhao Ming as he asked indifferently. I can agree to it. Zhao Ming gnashed his teeth as he spoke. Elder Ming, you're actually so straightforward? Duan Lingtian's brows raised, and he was slightly surprised. Since it's like this, then I'll ask the 3 of you to swear an oath. Zhao Ming's group of 3 glanced at each other when they heard this, then pinched open their fingers at the same time. 3 drops of blood rose into the sky, right when Zhao Ming's group of 3 were about to swear an oath using the 99 heavenly tribulation. The expressions of the 3 instantly went grim. There's no need to go through so much trouble. The 3 of you, fuck off. A low and hoarse voice seemed to sweep over from all directions, and it entered into the sky before descending into the ears of Duan Lingtian, Qin Xiang, and Zhao Ming. Who? Duan Lingtian and Qin Xiang were stunned. Right at this moment, they saw a scene that they were unable to forget in their entire lifetime. Zhao Ming's group of 3 floated in the sky in the distance, yet their expressions instantly went grim, and their faces flushed red. It was as if they'd suffered an extremely great pressure. Chapter 483. Zhao Ming's face flushed red, and it was as if he was enveloped by a formidable pressure, causing him to be in a dilemma. At this moment, he was still gritting his teeth and bitterly enduring. His body trembled, and he was obviously unable to persist for long. Of course, Zhao Ming didn't sit there and wait for death. Whoosh! The origin energy on his body occasionally raged, and it was like the milky white-colored flames that were ceaselessly burning. But every single time this white-colored flames rose explosively, it would be dispersed by a shapeless force. That shapeless force seemed to have transformed into a terrifying strong wind that followed him like a shadow, and even if only a trace of origin energy suffused his body, it would be directly shattered. Above Zhao Ming's head, the 8 ancient horned dragon silhouettes that had yet to fully condense into form were directly shattered and killed in the cradle. Zhao Ming roared with a low voice, and he had an unwilling expression as his eyes stared wide open, and the origin energy on his body rose once more. This time, there was an additional strand of azure-colored energy within the origin energy that rose explosively like flames, and it was precisely the 5th-level wind concept that Zhao Ming had comprehended. At the same time, a total of 13 ancient horned dragon silhouettes intended to condense into form in the sky above Zhao Ming. Bang! But unfortunately, even if Zhao Ming exerted his full strength, he was still like an ant before that strong, shapeless force, and he couldn't withstand a single blow. Who's there? Come out if you have the ability to hide. Zhao Ming's face flushed red to the extreme as a grade 6 spirit sword appeared in his hand. But even if he relied on the grade 6 spirit sword, he was unable to withstand the strong pressure that enveloped him. It wasn't just that, the strong pressure was ceaselessly strengthening, and it was like a lofty and enormous mountain was pressing down on him, causing him to have no place to be afraid, and he only felt he was on the verge of suffocating. Whereas now, Tanghua and Zhonglin were in the same situation as Zhao Ming. Their cultivations were similar to Zhao Ming, yet they were suppressed by the strong pressure to the point of being unable to catch their breaths, causing their faces to flush red and their eyes to be filled with blood. They could imagine that if this were to continue, the 3 of them would sooner or later be blasted into pieces by the strong pressure. Senior, spare me. Finally, Tang Hua was the first to be unable to endure it, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as he begged for mercy. Oomph! A low and hoarse cold snort was transmitted over. Instantly, Tang Hua felt the pressure that enveloped him vanish without a trace, and this feeling of obtaining new life caused him to be extremely delighted. If it wasn't for Zhao Ming and Zhonglin still struggling bitterly there, he would have felt that everything that had happened earlier was only a daydream. Subsequently, Tang Hua noticed that the nearby Duan Lingtian, who stood on the back of the enormous gold mouse, and Qin Xiang, who stood in midair at the side, didn't seem to be enveloped by the pressure of the expert. At the same time, he noticed the astonishment that appeared on the faces of Duan Lingtian and Qin Xiang. Duan Lingtian and Qin Xiang also don't know that expert? In the beginning, Tang Hua thought that powerhouse was helping Duan Lingtian and Qin Xiang. But now, Duan Lingtian and Qin Xiang obviously didn't know of the existence of that expert. In other words, Duan Lingtian and Qin Xiang might not know that expert. Even so, he didn't dare to be presumptuous anymore. Senior, spare me, spare me. Finally, Zhonglin couldn't endure it any longer, and he repeatedly spat out a few mouthfuls of blood before hurriedly begging for mercy. Fortunately, I begged for mercy since the beginning. Otherwise, my end would surely be the same as Zhonglin. As he looked at Zhonglin, who was pressed down to the point of being heavily injured. At the same time that Tang Hua felt a wave of lingering fear in his heart, he felt a wave of satisfaction in his heart. It's I who had foresight. Along with Zhonglin begging for mercy, the pressure that enveloped him vanished without a trace. Thank you, Senior. At this instant, Zhonglin felt as if he'd arrived at heaven from hell, and he thanked the sky respectfully and reverently. He glanced at Zhao Ming, who was still struggling, and he shook his head as he felt Zhao Ming was doing something useless. The pressure of that expert is still ceaselessly strengthening. In at most over 10 breaths of time, Zhao Ming will die for sure if he still doesn't beg for mercy. This was something that Zhonglin could be sure of. After consuming a 6th-grade Great Recovery pill, Zhonglin felt his injuries had recovered slightly. He looked at Tang Hua, and just happened to notice Tang Hua looking at him as well, and he couldn't help but ask via voice transmission. Tang Hua, what cultivation do you think that expert actually possesses? He hasn't made an appearance, Yet the pressure condensed from his imposing aura is sufficient to crush us. Tang Hua had a heavy expression as he replied via voice transmission. According to my personal guess, that expert is at least in existence at the 7th level of the void interpretation stage or above. It's even to the extent that it's extremely likely that he's an expert that has stepped into the void transformation stage. Void transformation stage. Zhong Lin's body trembled as he shuddered. A tiny kingdom actually possesses an existence at the 7th level of the void interpretation stage or above. Could it be that the world has changed? Could it be that this is the legendary reclusive expert? It should be. Tang Hua nodded with an expression of fear and perturbed. If he had a choice, he would rather have never come to the Crimson Sky Kingdom. The scene from before was something he couldn't forget for his entire lifetime. Senior, spare me, spare me. Suddenly, after a few breaths of time, Xiaoming finally couldn't refrain from begging for mercy. The blood he spat out was like a small waterfall that flowed down, and it was rather magnificent. Umph. A low and hoarse cold snort sounded out once more. That terrifying pressure vanished without a trace, and it was as if it had never appeared. Meanwhile, Tang Hua and Zhong Lin glanced at Zhao Ming, whose countenance was ghastly pale like a sheet, and a wisp of coldness couldn't help but arise within their hearts. This was the consequence of being a tough nut to crack. Speaking crudely, it was that he'd gone too far in showing off. I never imagined that there's actually such an expert in the Crimson Sky Kingdom. When Zhao Ming was begging for mercy, Duan Lingtian finally recovered from his shock, and his face was covered in astonishment. The person hadn't made an appearance, but merely his imposing aura had suppressed the 3 great 6th-level void initiation stage experts to the point of being unable to catch their breath, and it caused them to beg humbly for mercy, according to the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu. If that expert isn't far away, then he's at least in existence at the 7th level of the void interpretation stage or above. If he's far away, then he's surely in existence at the void transformation stage or above. Duan Lingtian was extremely shocked in his heart. There's such a terrifying expert concealed within the Crimson Sky Kingdom? Duan Lingtian, that expert from before, you know him? Right at this moment, Duan Lingtian heard Qin Xiang's voice transmission. Duan Lingtian shook his head. How could he possibly know such a terrifying expert? In his entire lifetime, the strongest expert he'd seen with his own 2 eyes was the city governor of Phoenix Nest City, Feng Wu Dao, that he met in the Darkstone Empire that day. According to Duan Lingtian's guess, it was extremely likely that Feng Wu Dao was a void interpretation stage expert. He had an intuition. The existence that used his imposing aura to suppress the 3 great 6th-level void initiation stage experts to the point they were unable to catch their breath earlier had a strength that was even above Feng Wu Dao. Senior, may I ask if you want to protect this Duan Lingtian? After Zhao Ming consumed a healing medicinal pill and recovered slightly from his injuries, he took a deep breath and slowly asked towards the sky. Zhao Ming's words caused Tang Hua and Zhong Lin to be caught off guard, and their expressions instantly went grim. Is this Zhao Ming courting death? At this moment, they wished for nothing more than for that expert to completely conceal himself and not make another appearance, even if it was only a voice. As for the matter of killing Duan Lingtian and eliminating the roots of the Azure Forest Trisect, and even coercing Duan Lingtian to lead the way to find the 10,000-year stalactite milk, there would be plenty of chances in the future. Yet now, Zhao Ming seemed to wish for nothing more than for that expert to appear once more. Zhao Ming, don't drag the 2 of us along if you want to court death. For a time, Tang Hua and Zhong Lin couldn't refrain from sending voice transmissions into Zhao Ming's ears as they spoke furiously. But Zhao Ming paid no attention to them and still said with a low voice, Senior, this Duan Lingtian crippled my grandson and indirectly killed my son. The enmity between me and him is absolutely irreconcilable. I hope Senior can grant my wish and allow me to take him away. I'll be endlessly grateful. As soon as Zhao Ming said this, Duan Lingtian frowned, and he was slightly perturbed in his heart. Qin Xiang had a perturbed expression as well. She knew clearly in her heart that so long as that mysterious expert said something about protecting Duan Lingtian, then no matter how unwilling Zhao Ming was, he would have no choice but to leave. Tang Hua and Zhong Lin held their breaths. Finally, that low and hoarse voice sounded out once more. The enmity between the two of you isn't related to me, and I don't want to interfere as well. Zhao Ming's eyes lit up when he heard the mysterious expert, and he said excitedly, "Thank you, senior." As he spoke, Zhao Ming stepped out in the sky with the intention of taking Duan Lingtian away. Tang Hua and Zhong Lin revealed pleasantly surprised expressions. "There's hope for the 10,000-year stalactite milk." Qin Xiang's face went grim as she pleaded respectfully. "Senior, please lend a hand and save this child." Qin Xiang is endlessly grateful. A wisp of a bitter smile appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth. He originally thought that he would be able to escape calamity, yet unexpectedly, the situation took a turn. Looks like he'd have to return to hell from heaven once more. Practically at the instant their moods changed abruptly, the low and hoarse voice of the mysterious expert sounded out once more. "But, within the territory of the Crimson Sky Kingdom, outsiders aren't allowed to be presumptuous. The three of you, go back to where you came from. You can do whatever you want in other places, and it's completely unrelated to me. But within the territory of the Crimson Sky Kingdom, all of you Void Initiation Stage martial artists and above can forget about harming a single person or taking a single person away." The mysterious expert's voice was filled with overbearingness. He had an imposing manner as if he was the one who planted this tree and opened this path. The meaning within his words was extremely simple. All of you foreign martial artists at the Void Initiation Stage and above can do whatever you want in other places. Kill whoever you want. Take away whoever you want. But it was impossible in the Crimson Sky Kingdom. He protected every single member of the Crimson Sky Kingdom from being oppressed by Void Initiation Stage martial artists and above. After Zhao Ming's group of three heard what the mysterious expert said, the excited smiles on their faces completely froze. On the other hand, Qin Xiang and Duan Lingtian instead had pleasantly surprised expressions. "All three of you, get the hell out of the Crimson Sky Kingdom right now. If you dare stay any longer, I can only lightly punish all of you and let all of you learn from your mistakes." The mysterious expert's voice sounded out once more, and it contained slight impatience mixed within. "Let's go." Chapter 484. Zhao Ming had a gloomy expression as he glared hatefully at Duan Lingtian, and the ghastly killing intent in his eyes was difficult to restrain. However, at this moment, he didn't dare act rashly. Since that mysterious expert had already spoken and wanted to protect everyone within the Crimson Sky Kingdom's territory. At this moment, even if he wanted to kill Duan Lingtian and didn't want to leave, he had no other way. In front of that mysterious expert, Yi Zichen was stunned. He could only compromise. "Duan Lingtian, you can either hole up in the Crimson Sky Kingdom for your entire life. Otherwise I, Zhao Ming, will absolutely not let you off." Zhao Ming glanced coldly and indifferently at Duan Lingtian in the end, and he intended to leave. "Then I'll wait and see." Duan Lingtian smiled indifferently, and he seemed to not care in the slightest. Zhao Ming's body shook, and the flames of rage on his face practically burned to the limit. He didn't flare up in the end, and he followed Tang Hua and Zhong Lin to leave in a sorry state. The three 6th-level Void Initiation Stage experts came in a hurry and left in a hurry. They didn't accomplish anything, and it was equivalent to coming here for nothing. Who? Duan Lingtian couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief, and he thanked the sky. "Thank you for saving me, senior." But unfortunately, the voice of that mysterious expert didn't appear again. It caused Duan Lingtian to feel as if all this was a dream. Of course, he knew that all this wasn't a dream. An expert with an extremely terrifying strength did indeed exist within the Crimson Sky Kingdom. I never imagined that such a terrifying existence existed within this tiny Crimson Sky Kingdom. At this moment, Qin Xiang had an astonished expression as well. The ability of that expert from before had completely shocked her as well. Perhaps that expert strength is not inferior to even my big sister's. Qin Xiang took a deep breath and slowly calmed her feelings. Then she looked at Duan Lingtian. "Duan Lingtian, was what Elder Ming said earlier true? Did you really cripple his grandson, Zhaoku?" Qin Xiang asked Duan Lingtian in bewilderment. As far as she was concerned, Duan Lingtian ought to not be an unreasonable person, and there was surely something hidden within. Sort of. Duan Lingtian shrugged, and while stroking the head of the little gold mouse that had grown up, he spoke of the matter between him and Zhao Lin one by one. There was nothing to hide. In the end, Qin Xiang came to a sudden understanding. So that's how it is. In this way, Zhao Lin only has himself to blame. However, that set of cultivation method that you fabricated, those 24 words that tease people, is indeed a little. Speaking until the end, Qin Xiang did not know how she should continue. Castration? To think that this little fellow could think of such a thing. Duan Lingtian rubbed his nose embarrassedly and smiled awkwardly. I didn't think too much at that time. I just thought it was fun. Who knew that they would actually? Indeed. A fabricated set of muscle tendon changing and marrow cleansing had crippled Zhao Lin's son's family jewels. This was something that Duan Lingtian had not expected. In the north of the Crimson Sky Kingdom, 3 silhouettes flew across the sky. They only slowed down when they arrived at the border of the Crimson Sky Kingdom. These 3 people were obviously Zhao Ming's group of 3 that had just fled in a sorry state in the sky above the Crimson Sky Kingdom's imperial city. The 3 aged figures stood in the sky and looked at each other, and they were able to see the astonishment in each other's eyes. That expert is too terrifying. Zhong Lin spoke with a slight lingering fear in his heart. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's territory is ahead. Should we first leave the Crimson Sky Kingdom and pass through the border between the Crimson Sky Kingdom and the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom before discussing that expert? Tang Hua took a deep breath and glanced at the direction of the Crimson Sky Kingdom's imperial city as he spoke with slight fear. Tang Hua's words caused Zhao Ming and Zhong Lin to be unable to refrain from shaking their heads. Zhao Ming was just about to mock Tang Hua when Zhong Lin had already spoken out before him. Tang Hua, you're really getting worse and worse. Undeniably, that expert is indeed extremely strong. But the place we're at now is extremely far away from the Crimson Sky Kingdom's imperial city. Could it be that you think that expert is able to know that we haven't left the Crimson Sky Kingdom? Zhao Ming nodded and deeply agreed. Tang Hua laughed in self-ridicule when he heard this, and he felt that perhaps he was really too sensitive. Even if it was an expert at the void transformation stage or above, it would probably be impossible for the expert to traverse such a long distance to monitor them, unless the expert was really bored to the point of following them. But was this possible? Tang Hua asked himself, and the 3 of them ought to not have such great face. Right at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly condensed into form in the sky and descended onto the 3 of them, causing the expressions of the 3 of them, who just caught their breaths, to instantly go pale. This aura was too familiar to them. Say, Senior. Tang Hua's face was ghastly pale. Earlier, he was still thinking that the expert that guarded the Crimson Sky Kingdom ought to not go to the extent of following them. But now it would seem that the facts weren't so. It was very likely that the expert was following behind them and monitoring them to see if they would obediently leave. Yet now, they didn't obediently leave. A trace of despair arose within his heart. Zhao Ming and Zhong Lin had similar feelings. The latter had a regretful expression. The former glared at the latter instead, and seemed to have completely forgotten that his thoughts earlier were the same as Zhong Lin's. Looks like the 3 of you have taken my words to be like the wind passing by one's ears. Since it's like this, then I can only give all of you a slight punishment and allow all of you to properly remember. A cold and indifferent and hoarse voice seemed to sweep over from all directions. For a time, the atmosphere in the entire sky became slightly strange. Senior, spare me, spare me. Tang Hua's face was ghastly pale as his body shivered. Although that formidable aura didn't completely suppress him, he didn't dare make the slightest movement. He knew clearly in his heart that if he dared flee, then he would die without a doubt. This was something he didn't doubt in the slightest. Senior, spare me. Zhao Ming and Zhong Lin's expressions were extremely unsightly, and their eyes were filled with boundless terror. Before today, they practically didn't dare believe it. With their strengths, they'd actually repeatedly begged for mercy before the same person in this tiny kingdom. But they understood that if they didn't beg for mercy, then they would die without a doubt. Earlier, it was you who questioned my ability? The hoarse voice was filled with ghastly coldness as it sounded out. At the same time, in the sky above Zhonglin, the air shook as airflow swept out, and it seemed to have transformed into circle after circle of ripples that stretched out. At the center of these ripples, the air was compressed, and the clouds and mist roiled. Subsequently, swoosh, a violet-colored lightning bolt that was as thick as a water bucket appeared out of thin air and descended towards Zhonglin. Xiaoming and Tang Hua only felt something flash before their eyes. Bang! In practically an instant, their thoughts hadn't even had the time to turn back when they noticed that Zhonglin, who was originally standing nearby in the sky, had vanished without a trace, whereas that violet-colored lightning bolt that was as thick as a water bucket only appeared briefly. Zhonglin's aura had completely vanished. There was only one possibility. Zhonglin was dead. Tang Hua and Zhao Ming's already ghastly pale countenances were now pale like a piece of paper, and their bodies started trembling even more intensely. "Senior, spare us. It was Zhonglin who instigated us to stay behind earlier. Otherwise, we'd have done as you asked and left the Crimson Sky Kingdom long ago." Tang Hua begged for mercy in panic, and he looked around with the intention of searching for the whereabouts of the mysterious expert. But no matter how he searched, he didn't notice the slightest trace of the mysterious expert. That expert seemed as if he wasn't in the surroundings at all. "Yeah, Senior. So long as you're willing to spare our lives, we'll leave right away. Leave right away." Zhao Ming was afraid as well, completely afraid. Zhonglin was a guardian elder of the Azure Forest Trisect just like him, and his strength wasn't inferior to him. But it was precisely an existence like this that he didn't even have the time to react before being annihilated in the blink of an eye, and it caused him to be unable to help but feel terrified in his heart. "If both of you dare take half a step into the Crimson Sky Kingdom in this lifetime, I'll surely turn both of you into ashes." The cold and indifferent voice was peerlessly overbearing. "Fuck off. Fuck off." Tang Hua and Zhao Ming felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders when they heard the cold shout of the mysterious expert, and they hurriedly flashed towards the north. In the blink of an eye, they'd left the territory of the Crimson Sky Kingdom and entered the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. After they entered the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the two of them continued flashing all along the way, and they only stopped after an hour. Both of them looked at each other, and they saw boundless terror in each other's eyes. In their hearts, they made up their minds. In the future, no matter what happened, they wouldn't take half a step into the Crimson Sky Kingdom again. The warning of the mysterious expert from before had taken root and sprouted in their hearts. "Looks like if I want to coerce that Duan Lingtian to take us to the location of the 10,000-year stalactite milk, then I can only wait for him to leave the Crimson Sky Kingdom first." Tang Hua frowned after his mood eased up after he'd managed to survive. Obviously, Tang Hua hadn't forgotten the 10,000-year stalactite milk that Duan Lingtian spoke of until now. "I don't believe he can hide in the Crimson Sky Kingdom for his entire lifetime." Zhao Ming gnashed his teeth and was enraged to the limit. His hatred towards Duan Lingtian was something that was difficult for others to compare to. "Now, I can only hope that the location of the 10,000-year stalactite milk isn't in the Crimson Sky Kingdom." Tang Hua suddenly thought of a problem, and a wisp of worry appeared on his face. The matter of the 10,000-year stalactite milk should wait until that Duan Lingtian leaves the Crimson Sky Kingdom, and we can capture him. Otherwise, everything is only a dream. Zhao Ming grunted. "Elder Ming, the matter of the 10,000-year stalactite milk. You." Tang Hua looked at Zhao Ming and spoke with a serious expression. But he hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted by Zhao Ming. "Don't worry. I'm not stupid to the point of sharing the 10,000-year stalactite milk with others. The fewer people that know about this matter, the more beneficial it is to us. A certain amount of 10,000-year stalactite milk is required to be able to assist us in improving our natural talent to the limit." Tang Hua hadn't finished speaking when Zhao Ming guessed his thoughts. "Earlier, that Zhonglin almost trapped us. But it's good that he's dead. We can have one less person to share the 10,000-year stalactite milk with." Chapter 485. Duan Lingtian and Qin Xiang descended from the sky together, and when they returned to their own courtyard house, they noticed that there were many more people in the courtyard house. Amongst them, Xiao Lan and Princess Bai Yao were the most conspicuous. The two young women stood there like celestial maidens that had walked out from a painting. After Duan Lingtian appeared, the gloominess on the beautiful faces of the two young women dispersed, and they bloomed with a wisp of a smile that seemed capable of captivating all living things. This caused Qin Xiang to be unable to refrain from shaking her head and sighing. Looks like the man of her disciple is indeed extremely popular. As someone who'd experienced it before, she naturally saw the gazes the two young women before her had when they looked at Duan Lingtian with infatuation. Most importantly, in terms of beauty, these two young women weren't inferior to her disciple, Kerr, in the slightest. Father, mother, this is Peak Master Qin Xiang, Kerr's master. I've told both of you about her. Duan Lingtian looked at Duan Rufeng and Li Ro as he lightly smiled and introduced. So it's Peak Master Qin Xiang. Li Ro greets you. Li Ro nodded to Qin Xiang. Peak Master Qin Xiang. Duan Rufeng greeted Qin Xiang as well. Qin Xiang replied with a smile. Then she looked at Li Ro and said with an envious expression, Little sister Li Ro, I've heard Kerr mention you since long ago. You're truly fortunate to have such an outstanding son. It's truly enviable. Li Ro's face bloomed with a charming smile when she heard this. There wasn't a single mother that didn't like others praising their son, and Li Ro was no exception. Peak Master Qin Xiang. In next to no time, Xiao Lan and Princess Bai Yao successively bowed to Qin Xiang under the introduction of Duan Lingtian. They knew clearly in their hearts that this was a higher-up of a top sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and her strength was shocking. In terms of status, even the Emperor of the Crimson Sky Kingdom had to be respectful to her. Martial Aunt Qin Xiang. Mou looked at Qin Xiang with an excited expression, like a small boat that had lost its way and found a harbor to dock at. Mou and Qin Xiang stood at the side as they communicated via voice transmission. The content of their conversation was none other than the matter of the 7-Star Sword Sect. Tianer, who was that? Why did you suddenly leave? Recalling what had just happened, Li Ro looked at Duan Lingtian worriedly. Xiao Lan, Princess Biyao, Jingru, and the others all looked at Duan Lingtian curiously. He's an enemy of mine in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, but he's already been driven away by Peak Master Qin Xiang, and I presume he won't come again in the future. Duan Lingtian casually found an excuse and said he didn't tell the truth because he didn't want his parents to worry about him. After all, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was undoubtedly a colossus in the eyes of his parents, an existence that was unparalleled. If his parents knew that he was facing such a colossus, they would undoubtedly be worried for him. Li Ro didn't doubt him when she heard this, and she nodded. That's good. Right, Tian. Didn't you say that Kerr and Fei went on a long journey with Peak Master Qin Xiang? Now that Peak Master Qin Xiang has returned, why haven't they returned? Duan Lingtian smiled. Mom, when Kerr and Fei returned, they just happened to arrive at the critical juncture of breaking through, so they returned to the sect to cultivate first. As for Peak Master Qin Xiang, she came to tell me about this matter. Li Ro came to a sudden understanding. So that's how it is. Subsequently, Li Ro looked at Xiao Lan and Princess Biyao as she said slowly, Lan and Yao know that you're in danger, so they rushed over at the first possible moment. They were still worried about you earlier. Accompany them to have a meal, just take it as helping them get over their shock. As Li Ro finished speaking, she glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian. She had an appearance of saying that if he dared refuse, Mom would be unhappy. Duan Lingtian laughed bitterly as he nodded, and he didn't refuse. The concern of the two women caused him to be unable to help but feel warmth in his heart. When Xiao Lan and Princess Biyao heard what Li Ro said, their beautiful faces couldn't help but be tainted with a wisp of crimson, and they were extremely embarrassed. How good would it be if Lan and Yao can become my daughter-in-law as well? Li Ro sighed lightly as she looked at the figures of Duan Lingtian's group of 3 that left. In the following few days, under the orders of his mother, Li Ro, so long as it was daytime, Duan Lingtian practically accompanied Xiao Lan and Princess Biyao. Duan Lingtian was naturally able to guess a little of his mother's thoughts. After a few days, he found an excuse to enter into closed-door cultivation and not leave. As the saying goes, Cultivation knows no time. These words weren't wrong in the slightest. 3 months later, Duan Lingtian's cultivation had successfully broken through to the 8th level of the nascent soul stage. During these 3 months, something worthy of mentioning was Qin Xiang brought Mo Yu along and returned to the 7-star sword sect. Of course, the 7-star sword sect didn't exist anymore, and Qin Xiang brought Mo Yu back to the 10,000-year stalactite cave on Migres Peak. The cultivation environment there could be said to be the best cultivation environment in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Moreover, with the 10,000-year stalactite milk that dripped down every once in a while to assist in cultivation, one's cultivation speed would surely advance by leaps and bounds. Duan Lingtian knew clearly in his heart. Now that the 7-star sword sect had been annihilated, Qin Xiang had taken Mo Yu to be the future hope of the 7-star sword sect, and she'd taken Mo Yu to be the next sect leader of the 7-star sword sect to foster. She was the junior sister of the 7-star sword sect's leader, Ling Hu Jinhong. And now that she was teaching a disciple on behalf of her brother, everything was logical. After breaking through to the 8th level of the nascent soul stage, Duan Lingtian walked out of his room in an extremely good mood. He sat before the stone table in the front courtyard and teased the little gold mouse. Squeak, squeak, the little gold mouse rolled around on the stone table, and at the same time, she sent a voice transmission to Duan Lingtian. Big brother Lingtian, when will big sister Kerr and big sister Li Fei return? Not so fast. Duan Lingtian shook his head. The two little girls were cultivating in the foreign lands, and it would probably be impossible for them to return in a short period of time, although he missed the two little girls very much as well. But he was happy for the two little girls that they were able to obtain such good fortune. He believed, with the fostering of a great power in the foreign lands, the accomplishments of the two little girls would surely be limitless. Little Gold, let's go. We're going for a walk. Duan Lingtian called out to the little gold mouse, and after the little gold mouse leaped onto his shoulder, he left the courtyard house with large strides. After strolling around the imperial city's inner city, Duan Lingtian went to the Divine Might Marquis estate. Young Master Lingtian. The guards at the entrance of the Divine Might Marquis estate bowed respectfully to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian smiled lightly as he entered the Divine Might Marquis estate, as if he was strolling through his own back garden. Duan Lingtian saw Nye Yuan and Nye Fawn in the audience hall of the Divine Might Marquis estate. Uncle Nye, Big Brother Nye, I heard the two of you talking about the martial competition of the 10 dynasties earlier. What's that? Duan Lingtian asked Nye Yuan and Nye Fawn curiously. Earlier, he hadn't entered the audience hall when he heard Nye Yuan and Nye Fawn chatting happily, and their topic seemed to revolve around the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Martial competition of the 10 dynasties. It obviously wasn't simple. Little Tian, you've come. Nye Yuan and Nye Fawn had smiles all over their faces when they saw Duan Lingtian arrive. After that, Nye Yuan explained. Supposedly, the martial competition of the 10 dynasties is a competition between the young geniuses of the 10 great dynasties, including the Dark Han dynasty. A competition between the young geniuses of the 10 great dynasties? Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted abruptly when he heard this. The Dark Han dynasty could be said to be boundlessly vast, and the geniuses in the martial Tao within it were innumerable like the clouds, not to mention the other 9 dynasties that were similar to the Dark Han dynasty. Uncle Nye, how did you know about the martial competition of the 10 dynasties? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Not to mention the Crimson Sky Kingdom, even the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was similarly far away from the Dark Han dynasty. But now, the grand event of the Dark Han dynasty had actually spread to the Crimson Sky Kingdom? It was the ambassador of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that was sent to our Crimson Sky Kingdom by the Imperial family. Nye Yuan explained slowly. Supposedly, the martial competition of the 10 dynasties will be held 5 years from now. At that time, the most outstanding young geniuses of the 10 great dynasties, including the Dark Han dynasty, will participate. This time, the Dark Han dynasty ordered the various empires under its command to select the most outstanding young geniuses 4 years from now to head to the capital of the dynasty to compete for the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. On the other hand, The empires ordered the various imperial kingdoms under their command to compete for the qualifications to head to the capital of the dynasty 3 years from now. When it came to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the Darkhan dynasty ordered the various kingdoms to send out their most outstanding genius martial artists to head to the imperial city of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. At that time, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom will select the most outstanding genius martial artists to head to the Darkstone Empire's imperial city, and their target is the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. When he spoke up to hear, Nye Yuan looked at Duan Lingtian as his eyes glowed. Supposedly, the martial competition of the 10 dynasties is held by a formidable power that surpasses the Darkhan dynasty's imperial family. I suspect that the formidable power that surpasses the Darkhan dynasty's imperial family is a power from the foreign lands. Little Tian, if you're able to become eminent in the competition in the Darkstone Empire's imperial city and head to the capital of the Darkhan dynasty, then even if you're unable to obtain the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, you'll still be able to obtain the rewards bestowed by the Darkstone Empire's imperial family. Supposedly, even the imperial families of the various imperial kingdoms would covet those rewards. Nye Yuan finished speaking in a single breath. A power from the foreign lands? Hold the martial competition of the 10 dynasties? Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he thought to himself. I wonder what the intentions of that power from the foreign lands doing this. Duan Lingtian believed that the power from the foreign lands would absolutely not be bored to the point of holding the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. There was surely something hidden within it. Not only that, even if Little Tian only shows outstanding talent in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom and obtains the qualifications to head to the Imperial City, you'll similarly be able to obtain many rewards from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial family. Nye Fon looked at Duan Lingtian and said with a smile, Little Tian, His Majesty has already decided that our Crimson Sky Kingdom will send you over. So long as you're able to show outstanding talent in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, our Crimson Sky Kingdom will be able to obtain generous rewards from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial family, and it's even to the extent that will be exempt from taxes for 10 years. Subordinate kingdoms had to hand over large amounts of taxes to the great kingdom that stood above them. This had always been the rule of the various dynasties. The Crimson Sky Kingdom and the various kingdoms had to hand over taxes to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom and the various imperial kingdoms had to hand over taxes to the Darkstone Empire. The Darkstone Empire and the various empires had to hand over taxes to the Darkhan dynasty instead. A power from the foreign lands? Chapter 486. It can be said that this opportunity, to you and our Crimson Sky Kingdom, it's a win-win opportunity. Nye Fon's words were filled with confidence towards Duan Lingtian. He believed that with Duan Lingtian's natural talent and strength, he would surely be able to stand out in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom and obtain the qualifications to head to the Darkstone Empire's imperial city to compete with the young experts of the various Darkstone empires and imperial kingdoms. Once Duan Lingtian was able to continue to stand out in the Darkstone Empire, Duan Lingtian would be able to head to the Darkhan dynasty's capital and compete with the young geniuses of the Darkhan dynasty and the various empires to compete for the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. It could be imagined that the young experts that were able to obtain the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties would surely be the most outstanding monstrous geniuses of the various dynasties. The martial competition of the 10 dynasties was a competition between the group of young geniuses that stood at the peak of the 10 dynasties. At that time, it would be another fierce struggle. If one was able to stand out in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, one would even have the chance to join a power of the foreign lands. The words foreign lands held great weight and firmly suppressed the various dynasties. Then the martial competition of the 10 dynasties doesn't have specific requirements? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Supposedly, the people that participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties can't exceed 40 years of age. They must be of the true younger generation. Otherwise, even if they seize the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, their qualifications to participate would be directly revoked in the end. Nye Yuan spoke slowly. In other words, the young geniuses of the various dynasties that are preparing for the martial competition of the 10 dynasties can't exceed 35 years of age. After all, even if they're only 35 years old now, they'll be 40 years old 5 years from now. Duan Lingtian's brows raised. Can't exceed 40 years of age? Actually, we don't really understand this as well, Niefan said with a smile. Generally speaking, people under the age of 40 are collectively referred to as youths. However, there are many people over the age of 40, such as Uncle Ru Feng, people around the age of 50, who maintain themselves well and appear to be only around the age of 30. When he spoke up to hear, Niefan glanced at Nie Yuan and smiled. Unlike my father. What? You little brat. You dare complain that your father is old? Nie Yuan glared at him and shouted in a low voice. Niefan instantly shriveled up when he heard this. Father, I was joking. Big brother Niefan. Duan Lingtian instead declined to comment on what Niefan said. I've seen a record in an ancient book. Supposedly, there's a miraculous or in the foreign lands that, after being polished, can become an age-measuring pearl. As long as a person puts their hand on the age-measuring bead, the age-measuring bead will have a reaction and ribbons will appear. For example, if a newborn child touches the age-measuring bead, a faint red ribbon will appear, indicating that the child is under 1 year old. When a child is 1 year old, one red ribbon will turn dark. If a child is 2 years old, 2 red ribbons will appear. At the age of 10, you will have 10 red ribbons. Later on, when older people touch it with their hands, different colored ribbons will appear, representing different ages. All this Duan Lingtian spoke of was naturally not something he saw in an ancient book. The reason he knew of this was because there were records of the age-measuring pearl in the memories of the Samsara Emperor Wu. The age-measuring pearl was able to measure a person's age. Of course, the age-measuring pearl wasn't all-powerful. At most, it was only able to measure the true age of a person below the age of 80. But even then, it was more than sufficient to measure the ages of all the young geniuses that were participating in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. When they heard Duan Lingtian, not only was Niefan stunned, even Nie Yuan was stunned. There's such a miraculous thing in the world? Truly unbelievable. Nie Yuan's mental fortitude was stronger, and he was the first to recover from his shock as he sighed with emotion. Cloud Continent is so large and filled with all sorts of wonders. It isn't surprising that there's an existence like the age-measuring pearl. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled, then asked, Right, Uncle Nie? Did the ambassador from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom say when the young geniuses selected by our Crimson Sky Kingdom will go to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? What's the exact situation after they go? Nie Yuan's eyes flashed as he said, according to what that ambassador said, they only have to arrive at the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City within a year. As for after arriving at the Azure Forest Imperial City, the young geniuses selected by the various kingdoms only have to produce proof to become students of the Azure Forest Imperial City's Dragon and Phoenix Academy. 2 years from now, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City will hold a genius competition. At that time, so long as the people that are able to stand out in the genius competition, they will be able to obtain the opportunity to head to the Darkstone Empire's Imperial City and compete with the young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire and the various imperial kingdoms. From the Imperial City to the Empire, from the Empire to the Dynasty. After that, it's the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. I can imagine that anyone that's able to walk to the end will surely soar into the sky. As he finished speaking, Nie Yuan was slightly excited. But unfortunately, this martial competition of the 10 dynasties came too quickly. If it came another 5 or 6 years and little Tian was 33 or 34 years old when the martial competition of the 10 dynasties came, then it wouldn't be difficult for him to obtain the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties and even stand out in it. Niefan sighed. Even though he was confident towards Duan Lingtian, but Duan Lingtian's age was still too young after all. Perhaps Duan Lingtian would have the chance to head to the Empire, or even the dynasty to compete with the young geniuses of the various kingdoms and empires. But if he wanted to seize the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, it would probably be quite difficult. he didn't look favorably upon Duan Lingtian. Exactly. Nye Yuan nodded as well, and he agreed with Nye Fan's words. Only Duan Lingtian remained indifferent. After all, the martial competition of the 10 dynasties would only begin 5 years from now. Who could guarantee what would happen in 5 years of time? Little Tian, after you return, tell your parents. You can't miss this opportunity. A year of time can't be said to be long, yet it's not short either. Even if we use a nascent soul stage fierce beast to travel, I'm afraid it would still require half a year of time to travel from here to the imperial city of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Nye Yuan had a serious expression as he spoke. Even though he didn't look favorably upon Duan Lingtian being able to seize the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. However, he was extremely confident towards Duan Lingtian being able to become eminent amongst the group of young geniuses of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Even if Duan Lingtian became eminent amongst the group of young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire, he wouldn't be too surprised. So as far as he was concerned, even if Duan Lingtian was unable to seize the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties in the end, he would still be able to obtain many rewards and benefits from the imperial family of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom and Darkstone Empire. He didn't wish for Duan Lingtian to miss it. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded, then bid farewell to Nye Yuan and Nye Fan before leaving the Divine Might Marquis estate. The martial competition of the 10 dynasties in 5 years. Slightly interesting. Duan Lingtian stretched out his arms, and a wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. At the same time, his hand lightly shook, and a crystalline and translucent jade sword appeared in his hand. This jade sword, Duan Lingtian took a deep breath, and his gaze became faintly discernible. He still remembered that this jade sword was something he'd obtained in the misty forest near Aurora City that day. It could also be said that it was left to him by the Boundless Sect's young sect leader. At the same time, this jade sword was the culprit that caused the annihilation of the Boundless Sect. According to what the Boundless Sect's young sect leader said, this jade sword is the key to the Sword Monarch's treasure. A sword monarch usually refers to a sword cultivator martial monarch. A treasure vault left behind by a martial monarch would surely contain many good things. Perhaps, after Little Gold's cultivation breaks through to the Void initiation stage, I'll be able to gather with the other possessors of the Jade Swords and head to the Sword Monarch's treasure together. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and the origin energy in his hand bloomed out to fuse into the Jade Sword. He still remembered that the Boundless Sect's young sect leader had reminded him that he should only open the Sword Monarch's treasure after breaking through to the Void initiation stage. Duan Lingtian was able to understand the words of the Boundless Sect's young sect leader. After all, his cultivation was too low, and he was utterly unable to keep the Jade Sword. This Jade Sword has obviously been inscribed with a sound transmission inscription. I wonder if the other 8 Jade Swords already have owners. Duan Lingtian still remembered what the Boundless Sect's young sect leader had said that day. There were a total of 9 Jade Swords. Only when all 9 Jade Swords were gathered together would the Sword Monarch's treasure be able to be opened. A sound transmission inscription was undoubtedly an extremely brilliant inscription, and at least the current Duan Lingtian was unable to inscribe it. Only an inscription master whose spiritual force has attained the void transformation stage or above would be able to successfully inscribe a sound transmission inscription. The stronger the spiritual force, the greater the range of communication the sound transmission inscription inscribed would be. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and the origin energy that fused into the Jade Sword directly activated the sound transmission inscription. A sound transmission inscription was different from ordinary inscriptions, and it wasn't a one-time use inscription. I'm able to sense the other 8 matching sound transmission inscriptions, but I wonder if the other 9 Jade Swords already have owners. Duan Lingtian's brows raised. Right at this moment, a sonorous laughter sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. Ha ha ha, the 9th Jade Sword has finally appeared. Brother, your luck isn't bad. I heard long ago that the Jade Sword fell into the hands of a sect called the Boundless Sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom all those years ago. Later on, that Boundless Sect seemed to have been annihilated by a sect called the Black Fiend Sect. Looks like you're not simple since you're able to obtain that jade sword. Brother, you're from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, right? Duan Lingtian knew clearly that the sonorous voice was precisely communicating with him. That was the owner of the other jade sword. What do you mean by this? Could it be that you're not from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? Duan Lingtian was stunned and was slightly surprised. Exactly. I'm not from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. I'm from the Darkstone Empire. Brother, confirm a time and place, then we'll contact the other 7 people and go open the Sword Monarch's treasure together, all right? Chapter 487. Sorry, I don't have the intention to cooperate with all of you to open the Sword Monarch's treasure for now. Duan Lingtian spoke indifferently. His voice was transmitted out through the voice transmission inscription on the jade sword in his hand. Duan Lingtian found out from the owner of the sonorous voice that the other 8 jade swords already had an owner. Moreover, the owners of these jade swords were mostly not members of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Why? The sonorous voice sounded out once more. This time, there was no excitement, and there was only bewilderment and bewilderment. I want to know what the cultivations of the other 8 of you are? Duan Lingtian asked. Meanwhile, the sonorous voice went silent for a moment before continuing. Looks like brother isn't confident of your own strength. Actually, the strengths of the 8 of us can't be considered to be strong in the various empires, and there are even 3 of us that are from an imperial kingdom like you. The strongest amongst us is only at the 6th level of the Void Initiation stage, and the weakest is at the 4th level of the Void Initiation stage. 4th level of the Void Initiation stage? 6th level of the Void Initiation stage? Duan Lingtian's pupils couldn't help but constrict. Looks like the strengths of the owners of those 8 jade swords were far stronger than him and Little Gold. Brother, if you're worried, we'll seize your jade sword. You can first hide the jade sword at a place that only you know of and no one is able to find. At that time, you can come meet us first, and we're willing to swear on the 99 heavenly tribulation that we'll absolutely not scheme to seize the jade sword in your possession and harm you. The sonorous voice contained slight anxiousness mixed within, and he wished for nothing more than for Duan Lingtian to directly appear before him and open the Sword Monarch's treasure with him. 99 heavenly tribulation? What you said isn't a bad choice. Duan Lingtian replied. Then brother, you, the owner of the sonorous voice, seemed to have heard a favorable turn from Duan Lingtian, and he was slightly excited. Sorry, I still refuse. Even if all of you won't seize my jade sword and won't harm me. But with my current cultivation, even if I really encounter any treasure after entering the Sword Monarch's treasure, I'm afraid I'm unable to seize it from all of you. Moreover, who knows if there's any danger within the Sword Monarch's treasure? Duan Lingtian said indifferently, so before my cultivation advances to the Void Initiation stage, I won't consider working together with all of you to open the Sword Monarch's treasure. I'll contact all of you once I've broken through to the Void Initiation stage. Duan Lingtian's tone was resolute and decisive. After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for the owner of the sonorous voice to reply before withdrawing the origin energy that had fused into the voice transmission inscription on the jade sword in his hand, and he stopped communicating with that person. No matter what, the Sword Monarch's treasure will be a turning point for me. I hope that I'll be able to obtain some gains from the Sword Monarch's treasure before the martial competition of the 10 dynasties begins, and from there, I'll become eminent in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties and officially step onto the stage of the foreign lands. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up as if he could see his bright future. Outer Realm. His 2 fiancées were there. The great treasure left behind by Emperor Wu of Samsara was also there. The Outer Realm was the true stage of the martial artists of Cloud Continent, and the experts were numerous like the clouds, causing one's hot blood to surge. Duan Lingtian looked forward to it extremely. After Duan Lingtian brought the little gold mouse home, he went to look for his mother and deadbeat father. Mother, father, I intend to leave the Crimson Sky Kingdom and return to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom in a few days. No matter if it was Li Ro or Duan Rufeng, both of them weren't surprised when they heard Duan Lingtian wanted to leave. After all, Duan Lingtian was a member of a sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom now, and he'd only returned this time for the sake of visiting his family and he would have to return sooner or later. Tian, if you're free in the future, bring Kerr and Fei back to see Mother often, Li Rose said to Duan Ling Tian. Of course. Duan Ling Tian nodded. Besides that, remember to bid farewell to Lan and Yao before you leave, Li Rose added. Duan Ling Tian replied. In the next few days, Duan Ling Tian went to look for Xiao Lan and Princess Bai Yao to bid farewell. The two young women were naturally extremely reluctant when Duan Ling Tian wanted to leave, but they knew that Duan Ling Tian would leave sooner or later. They were unable to make him stay. The goddess was willing, but the king was heartless. Subsequently, Duan Ling Tian successively went to look for Xiao Yu and Xiao Sun to have a meal together before bidding farewell to the two of them. After that, Duan Ling Tian went to the Duan clan and Paladin Academy to bid farewell to the Duan clan members and the two deans of Paladin Academy. After that, Duan Ling Tian went to the Divine Might Marquis estate and followed the Divine Might Marquis into the Imperial Palace, and he obtained the proof of recommendation that the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial Family issued to the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Imperial Family from the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Emperor. With this proof, Duan Ling Tian could rely on it to enter the Dragon and Phoenix Academy of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City and become a member of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Dragon and Phoenix Academy? A few days ago, when he was at the Divine Might Marquis estate, Duan Ling Tian had heard the Divine Might Marquis mention this Dragon and Phoenix Academy. But when he was at the Seven-Star Sword Sect, he'd never heard of this Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Your Majesty, this Dragon and Phoenix Academy is? Duan Ling Tian looked at the Emperor with a curious expression. The Emperor said, the Dragon and Phoenix Academy is a public academy that the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom specially established for the sake of the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. The young geniuses recommended by the various kingdoms will enter the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Not only that, supposedly, so long as the outstanding disciples of the various sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom are below the age of 35, the various sects can recommend them to enter the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. 2 years from now, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom will select the 5 most outstanding people from the Dragon and Phoenix Academy to head to the Darkstone Empire's Imperial City to compete with the young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire and the young geniuses of the various kingdoms. The Emperor finished speaking in a single breath. Duan Ling Tian came to a sudden understanding. No wonder he'd never heard of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy in the past. So it turns out that the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom specially prepared it for the sake of the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Commander Duan, your natural talent in the martial Dao is the strongest amongst the younger generation of our Crimson Sky Kingdom. This time, whether our Crimson Sky Kingdom is able to be exempted from 10 years of taxes and obtain the generous rewards of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom will depend on you. The Emperor looked at Duan Ling Tian with an expression of anticipation. I'll try my best. Duan Ling Tian lightly nodded. No matter what, the Crimson Sky Kingdom was his hometown. He would try his best to help the Crimson Sky Kingdom obtain benefits. After he took a piece of paper from the Imperial Palace, Duan Ling Tian bid his farewells to Nye Yuan. Uncle Nye, I'll have to trouble you to help me bid farewell to Big Brother Nye. I'll be making a trip home and will leave right away. Be careful on your way. Nye Yuan nodded seriously, then reminded. Little Tian, with your natural talent, it isn't difficult for you to become eminent in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom 2 years from now. Even if it's in the Darkstone Empire, it isn't impossible. But if you have the chance to go to the Dark Han Dynasty and compete for the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, you must remember not to be rash. If you're not a match for them, then admit defeat as soon as possible. In a person's lifetime, there's only one life. If you lose your life, then you have nothing. Nye Yuan's words came from the bottom of his heart. Uncle Nye, I understand, Duan Ling Tian replied, and his heart felt warm. Subsequently, Duan Ling Tian made a trip home to inform his mother, his deadbeat father, and his manager, Jingru, before leaving the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Imperial City. Whoosh! Duan Ling Tian sat on the back of the little gold mouse that had become larger and soared into the sky. Hee, Big Brother Ling Tian, that Divine Might Marquis told you that day that even if there's a nascent soul stage fierce beast carrying you, It would still take 7 or 8 months to arrive at the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial city. He's really narrow-minded. Humph, humph. With me carrying Big Brother Ling Tian, we'll be able to arrive at the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial city in a month at most. A voice that was like that of a little girl sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears, and the voice contained slight ridicule mixed within. It was precisely Little Gold's voice transmission. Duan Lingtian glared angrily at the enormous gold mouse beneath him. Little fellow, it's really easy for you to talk. You're a third-level void-prying stage demon beast. How can a nascent soul stage fierce beast compare to you? Big Brother Ling Tian, are we going directly to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial city? Or are we going to take a look elsewhere first? The enormous gold mouse's jade-green eyes ceaselessly revolved. We're naturally going to take a look elsewhere, so long as we arrive at the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Dragon and Phoenix Academy within a year. Duan Lingtian spoke as a matter of course. Little Gold instantly leaped for joy when she heard Duan Lingtian, and her speed slowed down as well. They spent 10 days of time before arriving at Black Wind City. Squeak, squeak, when they arrived at Black Wind City once again. The little gold mouse seemed to be extremely furious, and she stood on Duan Lingtian's shoulder while baring her fangs and brandishing her claws. Haha, Little Gold, I haven't asked you. How did you get sent to the Ma Clan auction house that day? Duan Lingtian looked at the little gold mouse and laughed. He still remembered. At that time, when he'd just left the Crimson Sky Kingdom's imperial city and arrived at Black Wind City, the first time he saw the little gold mouse was precisely at the Ma Clan auction house. At that time, the little gold mouse was an auction item. Up until now, when he recalled it, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but sigh. It was an old fellow at the half-step void stage that captured me. Big Brother Lingtian, I want to take revenge. The little gold mouse's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it contained slight anger mixed within. Is it a member of the Ma Clan? Duan Lingtian asked. No, but I remember very clearly that he's a member of Black Wind City as well. The little gold mouse said via voice transmission. Then you can slowly look for him later. We can stay here for 2 days. As for now, it's time for me to properly settle the old debts with the Ma Clan. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed with a fierce light as he spoke word by word. Ma Clan. That day, when he bid for the little gold mouse in the Ma Clan auction house, the Magnolia Trading Company's Black Wind City branch's guildmaster, Xiaoguang, intended to seize the little gold mouse from him. Of course, it took 2 hands to clap. Later on, it was precisely the members of the Ma Clan who colluded with Xiaoguang that exposed his tracks. Originally, he'd asked for compensation from the Ma Clan, and this matter could be considered to have come to an end. Chapter 488. At that time, when Xiaoguang's father, the vice president of the Magnolia Trading Company, Xiado, appeared before him, he knew it. It was the Ma Clan of Black Wind City that betrayed him. If it wasn't for this, it would be impossible for anyone to know that it was he who killed Xiaoguang. Ma Clan, since you think you have too much money, then I'll help you spend it properly. A wisp of an evil smile appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth. He still remembered that when he asked the Ma Clan to take out 10 million gold, the Ma Clan was still very straightforward and sent it over that very night. Presumably, the Ma Clan had been operating in Black Wind City for many years and had accumulated quite a bit of wealth. At the entrance of the Ma Clan estate, for Ma Clan disciples stood separately on both sides like door gods. Duan Lingtian indifferently glanced at the plaque on the entrance of the Ma Clan estate, and when he saw the 3 large words Ma Clan carved in flamboyant calligraphy on it, he knew that he hadn't found the wrong place. Duan Lingtian walked out in large strides and directly walked towards the entrance of the Ma Clan estate. Who is it? Stop. At the same time that Duan Lingtian walked to the entrance, he was stopped by the 4 Ma Clan disciples as expected. The gazes of the 4 Ma Clan disciples were fierce as they stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian indifferently glanced at the 4 people before him and slowly opened his mouth. F***K off. A shocked shout that contained dense origin energy tore through the sky and pierced into the ears of the 4 Ma Clan disciples. Instantly, the eardrums of the 4 Ma Clan disciples stung, and the eardrums of the two with lower cultivations were directly shattered, causing fresh blood to spray out as they emitted shrill cries. Although the other two weren't so exaggerated, their faces were still ghastly pale. When they saw the violet-clothed young man take a step forward in an overbearing manner, they didn't dare obstruct him and moved to the side in panic. At this moment, they could feel the rage that ceaselessly rose from the body of the person that had arrived. If they continued to obstruct him, the violet-clothed young man might directly make a move against them. They didn't doubt this in the slightest. This violet-clothed young man wasn't someone they could deal with. "I'll go around him and notify the patriarch." One of the Ma clan's disciples greeted the other three and entered the Ma clan's mansion, heading to the other side. After Duan Lingtian entered the Ma family mansion, he stopped a passing Ma family disciple and said indifferently, "Take me to your Ma family grand hall." This Ma family disciple saw that Duan Lingtian had an extraordinary temperament and thought that Duan Lingtian was a guest of the Ma family. He didn't dare to neglect and respectfully led Duan Lingtian to the outside of the Ma family's main hall. "Customer, you." The Ma clan disciple looked at Duan Lingtian, yet he hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted by Duan Lingtian. "All right, go call over your Ma clan's patriarch and those half-step void-stage old geezers. Just tell them that an old friend has come." Duan Lingtian swept the Ma clan disciple with his gaze, and while the Ma clan disciple was still in a daze, he seemed to have transformed into a gust of wind that blew into the main hall, and he impolitely sat on the wooden armchair that guarded the main hall. The Ma clan disciple was completely dumbstruck when he saw this scene. That seat seemed to be the head seat that only their Ma clan's patriarch had the qualifications to sit on, right? His heart jerked when he recalled what Duan Lingtian said earlier. Daring to sit on the head seat that belongs to the patriarch in our Ma clan's main hall, and even daring to call the ancestor old geezers. Looks like this guest's identity isn't simple. I have to hurry and report this to the patriarch and the ancestor. The Ma clan disciple thought in his heart and hurriedly turned around to look for the patriarch and ancestor of his Ma clan. In the Ma clan's main hall, Duan Lingtian sat on the wooden armchair as he grabbed the little gold mouse and lightly stroked its back. Squeak, squeak, the little gold mouse was comfortable to the point she let out a low cry, and her pair of jade-green eyes gradually closed. Duan Lingtian had a carefree expression as he silently looked outside the main hall. Outside the main hall, it was calm at the beginning, but 15 minutes later, a string of footsteps sounded out, getting closer and closer. Subsequently, numerous figures appeared within the scope of Duan Lingtian's line of sight. The person in the lead was a middle-aged man that wore an embroidered robe. The space between his brows revealed a sense of dignity, and he had an extraordinary bearing. Behind the middle-aged man, for old men followed closely behind him, and there were also many other people. They were obviously the higher-ups of the Ma clan. The group of people walked into the main hall in a formidable array. "It's you." In next to no time, the gazes of the four old men that followed behind the middle-aged man in the lead descended onto Duan Lingtian, and their faces went grim. Presumptuous. How could the seat of the patriarch be something a little kid like you can sit on? An explosive shout resounded throughout the main hall, and the middle-aged man that followed behind emitted a cold light as his figure flashed out to pounce towards Duan Lingtian with an imposing manner that shot into the sky like a rainbow. Bang! The middle-aged man slapped out with his palm, causing an origin energy palm print to appear and envelop Duan Lingtian like a shadow. At the same time, 1,100 ancient mammoth silhouettes dashed out from the sky along with the middle-aged man. This middle-aged man's cultivation was obviously at the 8th level of the nascent soul stage. Squeak, squeak. Right at the instant the middle-aged man struck out with his palm, a sharp cry sounded out. In the next moment, the little gold mouse in Duan Lingtian's hand had vanished. The people present only saw a golden light shoot out from Duan Lingtian's hand, and its speed was so swift that it was astounding to hear. Subsequently, bang! An enormous bang accompanied by a shrill cry that pierced the heart sounded out abruptly. Under the gazes of everyone present, the golden light blasted onto the middle-aged man, and the middle-aged man was directly blasted flying. He emitted a few mouthfuls of blood before fiercely falling to the ground and fainting. But now, no one looked at the middle-aged man's injuries. The gazes of everyone descended onto the golden figure in the sky. This was a little gold mouse that stood in the sky, and it glanced at the middle-aged man that had fainted with contempt before turning around and transforming into a golden light that returned to Duan Lingtian's hand. 4,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes. As they looked at the 4,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes that gradually dispersed along with the little gold mouse leaving, the expressions of the Ma clan members present went grim. Subsequently, their gazes descended onto the hand of the violet-clothed young man that sat at the head. The little gold mouse comfortably closed its eyes and enjoyed the violet-clothed young man's caress, and it seemed extremely like a cute and harmless pet mouse. But now, no one dared look at this little gold mouse as if they were looking at a pet. They knew. This was a demon beast, a third-level void-prying stage demon beast. Long time no see. Duan Lingtian's gaze slowly descended onto the four old men behind the middle-aged man in the lead, and he grinned to reveal his snow-white teeth. But when Duan Lingtian's brilliant smile entered into the eyes of the four old men, it instead caused their expressions to go grim. The gazes of the four old men descended onto Duan Lingtian, and their gazes contained slight bewilderment and disbelief mixed within. Exactly, it's that little gold mouse I bought from your Ma clan auction house that day. Now that I speak of it, I have to properly thank your Ma clan, otherwise, I'm afraid I have no fate with it. Duan Lingtian spoke slowly as he rubbed the little gold mouse's smooth back. From the beginning until the end, he had a calm expression that didn't contain any emotions. The bodies of the four old men shook, and the corners of their mouths held a wisp of bitterness. That little gold mouse from all those years ago has actually transformed into a third-level void-prying stage demon beast now? Is this still a gold fur mouse? You're that person from that day? The middle-aged man in the lead who wore embroidered robes was originally curious as to why their Ma clan would offend a person that had a demon beast by his side. But now, when he heard the young man before him, he seriously sized the young man up for a moment before finally recognizing the young man. Although it was the first time he'd seen this young man, he'd seen the portrait of the young man many times, and it left a deep impression on him. The incident that occurred in the Ma clan auction house a few years ago was something he'd never forget. Because of that incident, not only did their Ma clan lose a single person, they were even extorted of an entire 10 million gold. It was the first time their Ma clan had suffered such humiliation, whereas the instigator of all this was the young man that bought the infant gold fur mouse in the Ma clan auction house. The young man before him. This third-level void-prying stage demon beast is the infant gold fur mouse that was auctioned off in our Ma clan auction house that day. The middle-aged man was the Ma clan's patriarch, and his heart was ceaselessly bleeding. If he knew earlier that this infant gold fur mouse was able to grow to such an extent in a short few years, then no matter how great the price his Ma clan had to pay, even if they had to go bankrupt, they would still digest this infant gold fur mouse internally. Even if the seller didn't allow them to digest it internally, they would still bid for it. Now, they'd instead helped someone else achieve their goal. The affairs of the world were difficult to predict. Who could have imagined that the inconspicuous infant gold fur mouse from that day would grow to such a terrifying extent in a short few years? Demon beast. Moreover, it was a third-level void-prying stage demon beast. Looks like Patriarch Ma hasn't forgotten me. Duan Lingtian sat at the head and looked at the middle-aged man with a calm expression. Although it was the first time he'd seen this middle-aged man, Duan Lingtian still recognized him with a single glance. Being able to make those four old fellows crowd around like this, the middle-aged man's identity was obvious. It was surely the Ma clan's patriarch without a doubt. Patriarch Ma, now that I speak of it, I still have to thank you for the 10 million gold you gave me that day. I clearly remember Patriarch Ma's generosity. Duan Lingtian looked at the Ma clan's patriarch and a brilliant smile bloomed on his face. But when this smile entered into the eyes of the Ma clan higher-ups, it was no different than a devil. What exactly do you want? The Ma clan's patriarch gnashed his teeth. Although it was my Ma clan that was in the wrong that day, the instigator is already dead after all. Not only that, my Ma clan even gave you 10 million gold because of this. Moreover, You've even obtained this mutated gold fur mouse from our Ma clan's auction house. You've obtained great benefits. What else do you want? Chapter 489. The Ma clan's patriarch looked at the little gold mouse in Duan Lingtian's hand, and the burning sheen in his eyes seemed to have transformed into flames that could incinerate everything it could be imagined. If their Ma clan were to obtain this third-level void-prying stage gold fur mouse, their Ma clan would surely dominate Black Wind City. Patriarch Ma, your last words are slightly sour. At that time, little gold was taken out to be auctioned by your Ma clan's auction house, and it can only be said that your Ma clan members had eyes but failed to see, and that was why they allowed a bright pearl to be covered in dust, whereas I had discerning eyes and didn't hesitate to pay a great price to bid for it. Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at the Ma clan's patriarch, as he never imagined that the Ma clan's face would be so thick. Now, you have the nerve to say that I obtained a great benefit? Or perhaps, in the matter of little gold, you think I've taken advantage of your Ma clan? You. The Ma clan's patriarch couldn't help but be exasperated when he heard Duan Lingtian, yet he was speechless. After all, what the Ma clan's patriarch said wasn't wrong in the slightest. In this matter, it was indeed their Ma clan members that had eyes but failed to see, and they missed a variant gold fur mouse that could change the Ma clan's fate. Up until now, the Ma clan members still thought that the little gold mouse was only a gold fur mouse. The reason it grew so quickly was because it had undergone a mutation. They were completely unaware of the little gold mouse's true identity, the jade-eyed heavenly mouse. After all, the jade-eyed heavenly mouse was a demon beast of legend in the foreign lands. Even if it was in the foreign lands, not everyone had heard of the jade-eyed heavenly mouse. Young man, what exactly do you want? An old man behind the Ma clan's patriarch took a step forward and spoke with a low voice. This old man was precisely one of the Ma clan's supreme elders. All those years ago, this young man had a void-prying stage expert following by his side, and they were extremely afraid. Today, although that void-prying stage expert wasn't present, a void-prying stage demon beast had appeared by the young man's side. Moreover, it was a third-level void-prying stage demon beast, and it caused them to be even more afraid. What do I want? Duan Lingtian glanced at the old man and couldn't help but laugh. I should be the one asking you this, right? I've already repaid everything that our Ma clan owes you. What do you intend to do by breaking into our Ma clan this time? The Ma clan patriarch asked in a deep voice. You've repaid everything you owe me? Duan Lingtian was first stunned when he heard the Ma clan's patriarch. Then he came to a sudden understanding. Patriarch Ma, you ought to be talking about the death of the person in charge of your Ma clan auction house, Ma Qin, and the 10 million gold, right? Humph. The Ma clan's patriarch snorted coldly and tacitly agreed. That's right. Duan Lingtian nodded. Because of what happened at the Ma family auction house, what your Ma family owed me has indeed been repaid. Just when the upper echelons of the Ma family secretly heaved a sigh of relief, Duan Lingtian's voice abruptly rose, and it contained a trace of coldness mixed within. But I didn't come to your Ma clan today for the matter from that day. Since I took your Ma clan's money that day, I naturally wouldn't fuss about it. I came to your Ma clan to ask you to repay the debt that I owed you later. As he spoke up to hear, Duan Lingtian's gaze went completely cold, and his face seemed to be covered in a layer of ice. Squeak, squeak. The little gold mouse seemed to have noticed Duan Lingtian's rage, and it stood up and bared its fangs and brandished its claws towards the Ma clan's upper echelons. In its hand, a spirit sword appeared out of thin air, along with origin energy flickering on the sword in its claws. Whoosh! In the sky above the little gold mouse, 6,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes gradually condensed into form. This scene caused the heartbeats of the Ma clan's upper echelons that were already slightly lacking in confidence to suddenly speed up. Demon beasts have spirit swords as well? This spirit sword assisted it to amplify the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths. It's a grade 5 spirit weapon? All the Ma clan's upper echelons trembled with fear. Some with weaker hearts were terrified to the point they directly sat down on the ground, and their bodies shivered as cold sweat flowed out. Grade 5 spirit weapon. What concept was that? Even if it was the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, it seemed that only the few great powers that stood at the top possessed grade 5 spirit weapons, right? You. Who exactly are you? The Ma clan's patriarch looked at Duan Lingtian, and his face went ghastly pale and had a panicked expression, able to give a demon beast a grade 5 spirit weapon. Would a person like this be an ordinary person? Who I am isn't important. Duan Lingtian naturally knew what the Ma clan's patriarch was thinking, and he said indifferently, I presume all of you have thought of what you owe me, right? All of you are really capable. Originally, that matter had already ended, yet all of you still refused to let it go and even drew over Xiaoguang's father, Xiado, to me. Or perhaps, in all of your eyes, I would surely die at the hands of Xiado, and would forever be unable to get even with all of you, right? After Duan Lingtian finished speaking, his gaze swept past all the Ma clan higher-ups one by one. Every time his gaze descended onto a person, it would cause that person's face to be unable to refrain from going pale. The four old men behind the Ma clan's patriarch had bitter smiles and helplessness on their faces. They never imagined that this young man already knew of that matter. They originally thought that so long as Xiado found this young man, then even if this young man knew that it was them who did something from behind, it would surely be impossible for the young man to get even with them. After all, Xiado wouldn't let this young man off. But unexpectedly, for some unknown reason, Xiado was actually unable to kill this young man. Or perhaps, Xiado didn't even find this young man with great fanfare and was noticed by this young man first. But no matter what, they knew that they were going to be struck with misfortune. You. What exactly do you want? The Ma clan's patriarch's face started to go ghastly pale as he asked with a low voice, What do I want? Duan Lingtian smiled, and he glanced deeply at the Ma clan's patriarch. That will depend on the sincerity of your Ma clan. If your sincerity isn't enough, as he spoke up to hear, Duan Lingtian paused for a moment, and he glanced at the little gold mouse in his hand. Little gold, if the money they give isn't enough to buy meat for you to eat, then what do you think we should do? As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the little gold mouse leaped up and stood in midair. Then she waved the grade 5 spirit sword in her hand and gestured towards all the Ma clan higher-ups. This caused the expressions of all the Ma clan higher-ups to go pale. Half an hour later, Duan Lingtian brought the little gold mouse and left the Ma clan, and a wisp of a satisfied smile appeared on his face. This time, he'd plundered an entire 100 million gold from the Ma clan. Of course, it was all in gold. Practically all the existing gold in the Ma clan had fallen into the hands of Duan Lingtian. Little gold, I'll properly reward you today. Duan Lingtian brought the little gold mouse into a restaurant, and he specially ordered a table full of fried meat for the little gold mouse. The fried meat was of a variety, and its fragrance was oppressive. The little gold mouse ate until her stomach was round, and she lay on the table and burped ceaselessly. At this moment, the little gold mouse was round and extremely cute. Duan Lingtian shook his head and continued eating. After Duan Lingtian finished eating as well, the veil of night gradually descended, and Duan Lingtian brought the little gold mouse to find an inn to stay at. Squeak, squeak, the little gold mouse cried out twice to Duan Lingtian. What? Little gold, are you planning to go look for the person that captured you that day? Duan Lingtian smiled. Go on, come back early. Squeak, squeak, squeak. But, although the little gold mouse nodded, she didn't have the intention of leaving. Right at this moment, the little gold mouse's voice transmission sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. Big brother Lingtian, let's go together. Help me get some money to buy meat while you're at it. As the little gold mouse finished speaking, her jade-green eyes flickered with an azure light. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up when he heard what the little gold mouse said. All right, I only hope that half-step Void Stage fellow isn't alone. If he's a member of the other two great clans of Black Wind City, then it would be great. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian brought the little gold mouse and left the inn. After searching for half the night, they finally locked onto their target, Huang Clan. Duan Lingtian smiled as he looked at the estate that occupied an area no less than the Ma clan estate. If he wasn't wrong, this ought to be the estate of one of the three great clans of Black Wind City, the Huang clan. Hee hee. Big Brother Ling Tian. Looks like that fellow isn't alone. The little gold mouse's excited voice transmission sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. Big Brother Ling Tian, you must order another table of dishes for me tomorrow. Duan Lingtian was speechless. This little gold mouse spoke as if he'd abused it in the past. Duan Lingtian and Little Gold seemed as if they'd barged into the Ma clan and charged into the Huang clan. The Huang clan's reaction was more or less the same as the Ma clan. However, after Little Gold revealed a strength at the third level of the void prying stage, all the Huang clan higher-ups from the Patriarch were completely terrified. In the end, the half-step void stage martial artist of the Huang clan was pressured to come out as well. Squeak, squeak, the little gold mouse instantly cried out in rage when it saw this fellow. It's you. The half-step void stage martial artist of the Huang clan obviously recognized the little gold mouse, and for a moment, it was as if he'd seen a ghost. The infant gold fur mouse that didn't have the slightest strength to fight back under him that day actually possessed such a terrifying strength now. For a moment, he felt as if he was dreaming. But the facts proved that he wasn't dreaming, and everything before his eyes was real. All of you have seen it as well. This little friend of mine is extremely unhappy. That day, this supreme elder of your Huang clan made it suffer greatly. Duan Lingtian looked at the Huang clan higher-ups and grinned. Squeak, squeak. As if it was cooperating with Duan Lingtian, the little gold mouse cried out in rage. The cry contained origin energy, and it pierced the faces of some of the Huang clan higher-ups that were comparatively weaker to the point their bodies shivered. Then what do you want? The Huang clan's patriarch took a deep breath and asked. Patriarch Huang is a straightforward person as expected. Chapter 490. Compensation for mental damage? When they heard Duan Lingtian only wanted money, all the Huang clan higher-ups, including the Huang clan's patriarch, heaved a sigh of relief. As one of the three great clans of Black Wind City that was equally famous as the Ma clan, the Huang clan naturally possessed great wealth. But in next to no time, their expressions went grim. Only because Duan Lingtian asked for a few tens of millions of gold as soon as he opened his mouth. Isn't this a bit too much? The Huang clan's patriarch glanced at Duan Lingtian with slight hesitation, whereas the Huang clan's supreme elder that captured the little gold mouse that day and put it up for auction in the Ma clan auction house had a livid expression. After all, even the money he obtained from auctioning the little gold mouse that day was only a few million gold. This young man asked for over 10 times the amount of gold he obtained from selling the little gold mouse the moment he opened his mouth. It was simply an exorbitant demand. Too much? Duan Lingtian smiled lightly. Patriarch Huang, I believe that your Huang clan is still able to take out this bit of money. Right, that Ma clan's patriarch was much more straightforward than you. He didn't say anything before handing over 100 million gold to me. Ma clan, 100 million gold? As soon as Duan Lingtian said this, the group of Huang clan members were dumbstruck. Patriarch Huang, I'll give you the time of 3 breaths to consider. If you're unwilling, then if this little friend of mine impulsively does something, then it isn't a problem that can be solved with money. Duan Lingtian's face revealed a devilish smile. Squeak, squeak, whereas the little gold mouse that stood on Duan Lingtian's shoulder swayed the grade 5 spirit sword in her hand in a timely manner, as if she was saying to the Huang clan's patriarch, if you still don't give me the money, then I'll kill all of you. The corners of the Huang clan's patriarch's mouth twitched, and he could only compromise in the end. He didn't doubt Duan Lingtian's words in the slightest. If he were to delay for 3 breaths, then this third-level void prying stage demon beast would surely make a move against them. Clan leader Huang is indeed straightforward. After receiving the money, Duan Lingtian's face blossomed into a brilliant smile. Then he glanced at the Huang clan's supreme elder. Elder, next time when you catch a ferocious beast, you better open your eyes wide and look carefully. Otherwise, I'm afraid that just you alone is enough to make the Huang clan go bankrupt. Duan Lingtian's words before he left made the Huang family's grand elder's face turn red. Only when Duan Lingtian's figure disappeared from his sight did he finally catch his breath. He was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. The congested blood fell to the ground, as if it had transformed into a resplendent red rose, blooming on the ground. When Duan Lingtian walked out of the Huang clan mansion, he was extremely happy. Now, in addition to the money given by the Huang clan, the gold in my possession has reached 200 million. Creak, creak, the little gold mouse cried out twice, then said via voice transmission, Big Brother Ling Tian, don't forget my meat. Don't worry. So long as we eat in the restaurant in the future, I'll order a table full of meat for you. How about it? Duan Lingtian's mood was extremely good, and he promised the little gold mouse. Hee hee. Big Brother Ling Tian is the best. The little gold mouse's voice transmission was filled with excitement. Presently, it was already deep into the night, and Duan Lingtian brought the little gold mouse along to leave the Huang clan mansion, intending to return to the inn. All along the way, he couldn't see many people. Suddenly, two figures in the distance walked past Duan Lingtian with quick steps. Originally, it was nothing, but the light conversation of the two people instead attracted Duan Lingtian's attention. Fourth brother. Who's that woman called Wang Qiong? Boss Wu actually went out personally to capture her. Sure. Speak softly. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. That woman has an expert with terrifying strength following by her side. If it wasn't for that guild leader Han giving so much money, Boss Wu wouldn't have taken the opportunity while that expert was in closed-door cultivation to take the risk to capture that woman. After all, once this matter was discovered by that expert, then it would be certain death. Although the voices of the two people were soft, it was still heard clearly by Duan Lingtian. Wang Qiong? Duan Lingtian frowned. He remembered that the wife of Big Brother Zhang he met in Phoenix Nest City that day was called Wang Qiong. An expert with terrifying strength by her side? She wouldn't be talking about Big Brother Zhang, right? Duan Lingtian gasped. Big Brother Zhang was the Zhang Shouyong that Duan Lingtian met in Phoenix Nest City's Eternal Jade restaurant that day. Later on, Zhang Shouyong and his wife sent him and Li Fei back to the Seven-Star Sword Sect before leaving. Let's follow them and take a look. Although he wasn't sure, Duan Lingtian still followed them. In the end, under the lead of the two people, Duan Lingtian flipped over a luxurious estate. This estate was a private estate, and the people that lived within it were either wealthy or respectable. Guild leader Han. Duan Lingtian hid outside the hall and heard the two of them exclaim respectfully towards a middle-aged man in embroidered clothes. You are? The middle-aged man in embroidered clothes obviously didn't recognize the two of them. Guild leader Han, who we are isn't important. What's important is that the matter you entrusted to Boss Wu has already been completed. One of the two people lightly smiled as he spoke. Brother, what do you mean by this? Although the middle-aged man maintained his composure, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force was able to notice that the middle-aged man's breathing had obviously become hurried. This person is really careful. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Guild leader Han. There's a woman called Wang Qiong, and she's currently a guest in Boss Wu's estate. The other of the two said bluntly. Really? This time, the middle-aged man completely lost his composure, and his face revealed an expression of wild joy. Boss Wu really captured that bitch? Yes. The expert beside that woman just happened to be in seclusion, so Boss Wu tricked her out and captured her. Guild leader Han, Boss Wu asked us to find you, so as to avoid any trouble, we must do it cleanly before that expert finds out. One of the two said again. Haha. Good. I'll go with you now. The middle-aged man in embroidered clothes who was addressed as Guild Master Han laughed loudly and left the hall with the two of them, leaving his private mansion. Duan Lingtian continued to follow. It shouldn't be sister-in-law, right? Duan Lingtian frowned. Logically speaking, Wang Qiong shouldn't have any enmity with the people of Black Wind City. He knew Wang Qiong's character. Perhaps it was someone with the same name. Coincidentally, this Wang Qiong also had an expert by her side. However, for safety's sake, Duan Lingtian still followed them. If this Wang Qiong was really Big Brother Zhang's wife, his sister-in-law, and he missed it because of this, then it would be too late for regrets. Duan Lingtian followed the three of them and quickly arrived at the other side of Black Wind City, in an inconspicuous mansion. This mansion was extremely remote. If not for the three of them leading the way, Duan Lingtian might not have been able to find this place. Soon, Duan Lingtian discovered that the middle-aged man in embroidered clothes followed the other two into the backyard of the mansion. In the backyard, there was a separate house with a dog guarding outside. Woof woof. When the dog saw the middle-aged man in embroidered clothes, it barked as if it was in heat. Wang Kai, don't bark. We're on the same side. The two people in the lead quickly comforted the dog, causing it to temporarily calm down. Guild leader Han, Boss Wu is inside. Please. The two of them escorted the middle-aged man into the house and closed the door behind them. Duan Ling Tian followed into the rear courtyard, and when he saw the mutt look over, at the instant it opened its mouth and was about to bark. His spiritual force swept out, and he used his soul skill, Thousand Illusions, to construct an illusory space. He let the dog fall asleep like a dead pig. Pa. Suddenly, a crisp slap came from the house, followed by the voice of guild leader Han. Wang Qiong, you slut. To think that you would have such a day. I let you be proud. I let you steal my business. Today, I want to see how the person beside you will save you. Pa, 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 pa. The crisp sound of slapping rang out continuously. Han Jianan, you're despicable. You're not my match in business, and you actually used such a despicable method to deal with me. To think that you're the president of the Valley Chamber of Commerce branch. You've really embarrassed the Valley Chamber of Commerce. A crisp and pleasant voice sounded out at the right time. It was impossible to tell if it was happy or angry. Humph. So what if I use my methods? Who asked me, Han Jianan, to have so many friends? This brother Wu Ji is a good friend of mine. So what if the person by your side is strong? Didn't you still fall into the hands of brother Wu Ji in the end? Han Jianan grunted coldly, and his tone was arrogant. Today, I'll kill you. Slut, you're not worthy to go against me. Sister-in-law. Duan Lingtian felt the female voice was slightly familiar when he heard it, and he finally recalled it after a short moment. That voice was precisely the voice of his big brother Zhang, Shou Yang's wife, Wang Qiong. Stay your hand. Duan Lingtian didn't dare hesitate as he shouted out explosively, and then his entire body was like a cannonball as he smashed open the door and charged into the house. This was an independent torture room. At the center of the torture room was a torture pillar with a woman tied to it. Although the woman had a sorry state, she still didn't lower her head, and the tenacity on her face caused even men to feel ashamed of their inferiority. It was precisely Wang Qiong, Zhang Shouyang's wife. Sister-in-law. Duan Lingtian's face went grim as he looked at the bruises on the woman's face, and he shouted coldly, "Little gold." Instantly, little gold that was on Duan Lingtian's shoulder transformed into a golden light that shot out and bit off the rope that bound Wang Qiong, allowing Wang Qiong to regain her freedom. Brother Lingtian. Wang Qiong originally thought that a great calamity was about to befall her, but who knew that a person would suddenly appear to save her. The person that saved her was someone she knew. Kid, who are you? Why don't you inquire about who I, Blood Leopard Wu Ji, am? In this tiny piece of land of Black Wind City, even the members of the 3 great clans don't dare rashly offend me. Since you've come today, then don't leave. A robust middle-aged man with half his arm bare and a blood leopard tattoo on it spoke to Duan Lingtian with killing intent on his face. Han Jianan, who wore embroidered clothes, was currently looking at Duan Lingtian with a mocking expression. Is that so? Duan Lingtian sneered. A half-step void stage martial artist dared to speak nonsense in front of him? Blood leopard? Today, I'll turn you into a dead leopard. Right at this moment, a hoarse voice that was filled with ruthlessness instantly swept in from outside the room and filled the entire room. Chapter 491. Practically at the instant the voice entered into the room, Duan Lingtian felt a wave of trembling come from the ground, and the frequency grew faster and faster, as if the earth was quaking. What a formidable earth concept! Right at the instant Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted, and he revealed astonishment. In front of him, a tall figure appeared. This was a gray-clothed young man. The young man's expression was gloomy like water, and his eyes flickered with frightening cold lights. There seemed to be strands of earthen yellow halos flashing about on the surface of his body, and they emitted an extremely strange aura. Brother Yong. Wang Qiong revealed a wisp of an apologetic expression when she saw the gray-clothed young man appear. She was careless and caused her husband to be worried. Big Brother Zhang. The person that appeared before Duan Lingtian now was precisely the Zhang Shouyong he'd gotten acquainted with in the ancient city of Everlast, the young man with extraordinary strength. He was only a little over 30 years old, yet his cultivation had already broken through to the second level of the void initiation stage. Moreover, he'd even comprehended third-level earth concept. Moreover, he possessed a grade 5 spirit weapon wine gourd. How did you find this place? No, it's impossible. Wu Ji seemed as if he'd seen a ghost when he saw Zhang Shouyong, and his face was ghastly pale to the extreme. In his eyes, Zhang Shouyong was in existence at the void-prying stage or above, and he wasn't someone he could go against. This time, he dared capture Wang Qiong because he was sure Zhang Shouyong was in closed-door cultivation, and he was confident he could conceal Wang Qiong before alarming Zhang Shouyong. But now, all of this seemed to not be carried out according to the plan in his heart. Where exactly did I go wrong? He was unable to wrap his head around it. It's you. Han Jianan's body trembled when he saw Zhang Shouyong, and his eyes were filled with extreme terror. It was as if Zhang Shouyong was the judge that controlled life and death, and Zhang Shouyong could judge his life and death at any time and place. Han Jianan. Zhang Shouyong's face sank, and it seemed as if it was covered in a layer of ice. I warned you the last time. The matters between trading companies should be dealt with like in business. Looks like you haven't learned your lesson. If I knew you were so audacious, I shouldn't have listened to my wife and spared you. I should have killed you that day. Don't kill me, don't kill me. Han Jianan was so scared that he trembled and fell to the ground in a sorry state. Soon, the smell of urine filled the air. It was Han Jianan who was so scared that he wet his pants and peed all over the ground. This scene made Duan Lingtian speechless. This Han Jianan was the president of a branch of the Chamber of Commerce. How could he be such an idiot? Creak, creak, the little golden mouse, who was standing on Duan Lingtian's shoulder, called out twice. There was a hint of a smile in its green eyes. It was as if they were mocking Han Jianan. Killing you would only dirty my hands. Zhang Shouyong glanced at Han Jianan with disgust. Soon after, he lifted his right foot and slowly put it down. Boom! As Zhang Shouyong stomped his foot down, his origin energy surged, and an earthen yellow earth chi rose up, merging with the earth. The next moment, Kacha, 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 ear-piercing sounds of bones cracking rang out one after another. Amidst the sounds were Han Jianan's shrill cries that were filled with extreme pain. Han Jianan's shrill cries continued for an entire 15 minutes before stopping, whereas Han Jianan's body that trembled without end had finally stopped trembling and crashed onto the ground, smashing into a pile of mush. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted when he saw this scene. This has the same effect as my quake energy. However, Big Brother Zhang used the combination of origin energy and earth concept to shatter Han Jianan's bones in one go. Big Brother Zhang's earth concept. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian raised his head to look at the sky above Zhang Shouyong. There were 11 ancient horned dragon silhouettes there, and the enormous silhouettes were forcefully squeezed together by the narrow room. The strength of 11 ancient horned dragons. Duan Lingtian was astounded. When he observed carefully, he noticed that amongst the 11 ancient horned dragon silhouettes, 6 of them were separated from the other 5 by a distance. 4th level of the void initiation stage? 5th level earth concept? Duan Lingtian gasped. Never had he imagined that when he met Zhang Shouyong once more, Zhang Shouyong actually possessed such a terrifying strength. He still remembered that when he'd just met Zhang Shouyong that day, Zhang Shouyong was only a 2nd-level void initiation stage martial artist, and he'd only comprehended 3rd-level earth concept. But even then, he was shocked by Zhang Shouyong's natural talent and comprehension ability in the martial Dao. After all, Zhang Shouyong was only a little over 30 years old. Now, the strength Zhang Shouyong revealed when torturing Han Jianan in rage had once again shocked Duan Lingtian. Han Jianan was tortured for an entire 15 minutes by Zhang Shouyong's formidable origin energy combined with his 5th-level earth concept before dying, and he died extremely miserably. Void. Void initiation stage. The nearby Wu Ji and the other two people that brought Han Jianan over had finally recovered from their shock, and their bodies started trembling intensely as they looked at the 11 ancient horned dragon silhouettes in the sky. Ancient horned dragon silhouettes. They'd only heard of it and had never seen it. If it was at any other time, perhaps they would feel that their horizons were broadened when they saw the ancient horned dragon silhouettes with their own two eyes. But at this moment, they didn't have such thoughts. Spare us, Lord. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. When they saw Zhang Shouyong looking over, the two people by Wu Ji's side knelt on the ground with a bang, and their voices trembled as they were terrified to the extreme. Presently, they didn't even dare have the thought of fleeing. What a joke. Before a person that didn't utilize a spirit weapon and was able to exert the strength of 11 ancient horn dragons, it was impossible for them to escape even if they had 10 legs. Now, they only hoped that this expert would be merciful and let them live. Zhang Shouyong didn't even spare a glance at the two of them, and his gaze directly descended onto Wu Ji as he said with a low voice, "Wu Ji, you're quite bold to even dare touch my woman." Humph. Wu Ji took a deep breath. Perhaps he knew that he was facing imminent calamity and it was impossible for him to obtain the forgiveness of Qin Shi, so he completely let go and didn't have any scruples. I, Wu Ji, have roamed freely throughout my life, and being able to fall at the hands of a void initiation stage expert today can be considered to have lived my life in vain. Since you want to die, then I'll fulfill your wish. Zhang Shouyong's cold and indifferent voice seemed as if it sounded out from an icy pit, and it contained extreme icy coldness mixed within. Subsequently, Zhang Shouyong raised his leg once more before abruptly stomping it down. Bang! Terrifying origin energy roared as it accompanied his 5th-level Earth concept to sweep out and surge towards Wu Ji. Instantly, Wu Ji's body trembled as his face flushed red, and he endured the pain as he let out a muffled groan. Right at this moment, a wave of bone-shattering sound sounded out, and it was clear and ear-piercing, causing one to shudder with fear just from hearing it. Even though Wu Ji was unyielding, he still couldn't help but let out a shrill cry when his legs were shattered, and his countenance was ghastly pale. Bang! The bones of his legs were shattered into powder, and the lower half of Wu Ji's body transformed into a pool of mud with a bang. His upper half pressed down on this pool of mud, and his face was warped and savage as he was in extreme pain. Zhang Shouyong seemed to have the intention of torturing Wu Ji, and he'd intentionally withdrawn his origin energy and 5th-level Earth concept at this moment. Right at this moment, a strand of resolution flashed abruptly within Wu Ji's eyes that were wide open. Along with a raise of his hand, a spirit sword appeared in his hand. Swish! Wu Ji didn't attack the others, and he held the spirit sword as he swiped it towards his own neck, as he wanted to commit suicide to seek release. You want to die? It's not so easy. Zhang Shouyong's indifferent voice sounded out, and the spirit sword in Wu Ji's hand was directly blasted away by a formidable force, causing it to fall to the ground with a clang. Wu Ji's warped and savage face had an extremely unsightly expression. Subsequently, with a raise of his hand, origin energy coiled around his 5th-level Earth concept, and it whistled out to shatter Wu Ji's arms before Wu Ji raised his hand to strike the top of his head to commit suicide. Wu Ji's shrill cry sounded out once more, and it was exceedingly miserable and caused one to shudder with fear. At this moment, besides Duan Lingtian and the little gold mouse that had calm expressions and didn't have any changes in their expressions, Wang Chang's face had already turned pale. Wang Qiong's face paled. She had never seen such a scene before. As for the two people that knelt on the ground, they were terrified to the point they followed in Han Jianan's footsteps and wet their pants. For a time, the entire house was filled with the smell of urine. Just like how Ku and Little Fei are my reverse scale. Sister-in-law is also Big Brother Zhang's reverse scale. Duan Lingtian was able to understand Zhang Shouyong's current feelings. If Wang Qiong was replaced by Ke or Little Fei, then Han Jianan and Wu Ji would only be in an even more miserable state. As the king of mercenaries in his previous life, Duan Lingtian's methods of torment were far from something Zhang Shouyong could compare to. Brother Yong, kill him. In the end, Wang Qiong couldn't bear to do so. Zhang Shouyang's ruthless face revealed a rare wisp of gentleness when he heard Wang Qiong, and then his gaze went cold as he raised his hand and condensed a palm print that blasted down. Consider yourself lucky. Along with Zhang Shouyang's cold and indifferent voice sounding out, Wu Ji's head was blasted apart by his palm, and the brain matter that splattered out splashed onto the faces of the two people that knelt at the side. The two of them instantly cried out loudly, "Spare our lives, Lord. We're only errand boys. Spare our lives, spare our lives." But how could Zhang Shouyang, who was enraged to the extreme, let them off? Along with Zhang Shouyang's hand descending, the two people that knelt on the ground followed in the footsteps of Han Jianan and Wu Ji, and were deader than dead. "Qiong, are you all right?" Zhang Shouyang's figure flashed to arrive by Wang Qiong's side, and he asked in a light voice. Zhang Shouyang, who was like a malefic star earlier, was completely gentle like water at this moment, and compared to before, he was simply like a completely different person. "I'm fine." Wang Qiong lightly shook her head, then looked at Duan Lingtian. Fortunately, Brother Lingtian appeared in time. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would have lost my life at the hands of Han Jianan before Brother Yong arrived. Earlier, it was precisely Duan Lingtian that appeared in time and delayed for some time. Otherwise, Han Jianan would have succeeded long ago and killed Wang Qiong. "Brother Lingtian, thank you." Zhang Shouyang looked at Duan Lingtian with a grateful expression. In this world, the most important person to him was undoubtedly his wife, Wang Qiong. Chapter 492. Big Brother Zhang, you're too kind. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled, then asked curiously, "Big Brother Zhang, why are you and sister-in-law in Black Wind City? Besides that, why would sister-in-law incur enmity with a despicable person like Han Jianan?" "Let's leave first." Zhang Shouyang glanced at the 3 pools of urine on the ground and frowned. Then his brows relaxed as he looked at Duan Lingtian. "All right." Duan Lingtian brought along the little gold mouse and left with Zhang Shouyang and his wife, then followed Zhang Shouyang and his wife back to the courtyard they stayed in. "Guild Master." At the entrance of the courtyard, 2 middle-aged men that stood guard there respectfully bowed to Wang Qiong. Wang Qiong lightly nodded. "Guild Master?" Duan Lingtian's brows raised, and he was slightly surprised. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian brought along the little gold mouse and followed behind Zhang Shouyang and his wife to walk into a spacious courtyard. There was a spacious room within the courtyard, and it was obviously the residence of Zhang Shouyang and his wife. All along the way, the servant girls and servants they occasionally encountered on the way all respectfully addressed Wang Qiong as Guild Master. In the spacious courtyard, Duan Lingtian, Zhang Shouyang, and Wang Qiong sat around the stone table. "Big Brother Zhang, why did those people address sister-in-law as Guild Master? Could it be that sister-in-law has joined the trading company of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom and has even become the person in charge of that trading company in Black Wind City?" Duan Lingtian guessed. Zhang Shouyang smiled. "Brother Lingtian, you're really smart. You guessed it right. Exactly. Qiong is now the person in charge of the Floating Cloud Trading Company's branch in Black Wind City. As for that Han Jianan, he's the person in charge of another trading company in Black Wind City." When he spoke up to hear, Zhang Shouyang paused for a moment before continuing. Since Qiong became the person in charge of the Floating Cloud Trading Company in Black Wind City, Han Jianan has been suppressed by Qiong at all times. So he's always hated Qiong to the extreme. Last time, he'd already sent people to look for trouble with us, and I sent them away. But I never imagined that he'd be so audacious to dare collude with others to capture Qiong. Duan Lingtian was suddenly enlightened. So that's how it is. Sister-in-law is able to surpass Han Jianan in every aspect. You must be very talented and resourceful in business. As he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian looked at Wang Qiong with slight surprise. "Brother Lingtian, there's something you don't know. The clan that Qiong was born in was founded on business. Qiong followed my father-in-law everywhere since she was young and learned a lot of the ways of business. Now, it can be considered to be of use." As Zhang Shouyang spoke, he looked at Wang Qiong lovingly. "I see." Duan Lingtian nodded. "All right, Brother Lingtian, why are you in Black Wind City?" "I heard that the 7-star sword sect," Zhang Shouyong looked at Duan Lingtian and hesitated. Only now did he recall the news of the Seven-Star Sword sect being annihilated that he'd heard a few days ago. At that time, he and Wang Qiong broke out in cold sweat for the sake of Duan Lingtian and Li Fei, who were in the Seven-Star Sword sect. Exactly, the Seven-Star Sword sect doesn't exist any longer. Duan Lingtian nodded. Where's my little sister Fei? How is she? Wang Qiong reacted to Zhang Shouyong's reminder and asked with a concerned expression. She didn't care about the life and death of the other people in the Seven-Star Sword sect. What she cared about was the Duan Lingtian and Li Fei that she was familiar with. Duan Lingtian was safe and sound now, and she couldn't help but be worried about Li Fei's safety. Don't worry, sister-in-law, little Fei is fine. She just happened to not be in the Seven-Star Sword sect at that time. Duan Lingtian forced out a laugh. Now that he heard Zhang Shouyong mention the Seven-Star Sword sect, he couldn't help but recall the scene when the Seven-Star Sword sect was annihilated. Those scenes were unforgettable to him in his entire lifetime. Brother Lingtian, did you come to Black Wind City for something? Zhang Shouyong saw Duan Lingtian's current expression and guessed Duan Lingtian's thoughts, and he hurriedly changed the topic. It's nothing. I'm just passing by. Duan Lingtian smiled. Brother Lingtian, what plans do you have in the future? Wang Qiong asked Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian's gaze squinted when he heard this, and he said slowly, I plan to walk around and make a name for myself in this year. I must rush to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City a year later and enter the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Dragon and Phoenix Academy? Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong were stunned when they heard Duan Lingtian, as they'd obviously never heard of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Brother Lingtian, this Dragon and Phoenix Academy is? Zhang Shouyong asked curiously. It's an academy set up by the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial family for the sake of the selections for the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. It will gather most of the young geniuses in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom 1 year from now, and the selections will be held 2 years from now. The strongest few people will be left behind to head to the Darkstone Empire's Imperial City to participate in the next round of selections. Duan Lingtian spoke slowly. Martial competition of the 10 dynasties? Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong looked at Duan Lingtian with a bewildered expression. Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised in the slightest that Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong didn't know about the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Now, this matter had probably not spread completely yet. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian introduced the martial competition of the 10 dynasties in detail to Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong. He was able to notice that Zhang Shouyong's gaze had lit up many times. Obviously, Zhang Shouyong was extremely interested in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Big brother Zhang, with your age, you completely satisfy the conditions to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Moreover, with your natural talent and strength, it isn't difficult for you to obtain the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties and even stand out in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Duan Lingtian was filled with confidence towards Zhang Shouyong's strength. Presently, Zhang Shouyong was already a 4th-level Void Initiation stage martial artist, and he'd even comprehended 5th-level Earth concept. With Zhang Shouyong's natural talent, his strength would surely be even stronger 5 years later. Although he didn't know of Zhang Shouyong's origins, he was faintly able to guess that the clan Zhang Shouyong had mentioned in the past was probably a clan in the Darkhan dynasty. Perhaps, only a clan in the Darkhan dynasty was capable of fostering a genius in the martial Tao like Zhang Shouyong. Zhang Shouyong nodded, then glanced at Wang Qiong before saying, leave it to fate. Obviously, he was taking Wang Qiong into consideration. Duan Lingtian perceived this as well, and he didn't say anything further before bidding his farewells. Big brother Zhang, sister-in-law, I'm leaving Black Wind City early in the morning tomorrow. Let's part ways here. As he spoke, Duan Lingtian stood up. Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong nodded and sent Duan Lingtian off with their gazes. After Duan Lingtian left, the atmosphere between Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong became slightly silent. After a short moment, Wang Qiong said, Big brother Yong, this is a good opportunity for you. I know that you've always yearned for the mysterious and unfathomable foreign lands. This time, you finally have an opportunity. You must not miss it. Zhang Shouyong sighed. What about you? I won't separate from you no matter what. Wang Qiong smiled. I'll always be by your side. Zhang Shouyong's body trembled slightly when he heard this, and then he nodded. There's no rush. There's still 4 years of time anyway. If Duan Lingtian heard what Zhang Shouyong said now, he would surely be able to confirm Zhang Shouyong's origins with 100% certainty. 4 years. 5 years from now was the day the martial competition of the 10 dynasties began, whereas 4 years from now was the day all the young geniuses of the Dark Han dynasty competed with the young geniuses of the various empires, imperial kingdoms, and kingdoms under the Dark Han dynasty. Obviously, Zhang Shouyong was waiting for the competition between the young geniuses of the Dark Han dynasty. At that time, they would directly compete for the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. After Duan Lingtian left the floating cloud commerce's branch with the little gold mouse, he returned to the inn. Early in the morning of the next day, he woke up naturally from his sleep, and he brought the little gold mouse to a restaurant to have a good meal before leaving Black Wind City. After leaving Black Wind City, Duan Lingtian headed east of Black Wind City. All along the way, he cultivated and tempered himself. If it wasn't necessary, he prohibited the little gold mouse from making a move. Under his hard work, the returns were extremely great. Time flew by. 3 months later, Duan Lingtian had successfully broken through to the 9th level of the nascent soul stage. 8 months later, he'd successfully broken through to the half-step void stage. 11 months later, his cultivation had arrived at the peak of the half-step void stage, and he was only a step away from the void prying stage. Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, at the peak of a precipitous mountain not far from the imperial city. A violet-colored figure sat cross-legged there. This was a violet-clothed young man with a tall figure. He had slanted brows and starry eyes, and he was extraordinarily handsome and elegant. Presently, strands of white-colored origin energy occasionally raged out from the violet-clothed young man's body, and it was accompanied by strands of light azure-colored energy that flickered with an extremely strange aura. Squeak, squeak, on the shoulder of the violet-clothed young man, a fluffy little gold mouse was raising its head to look around, and it seemed to be vigilant. In its hand, it seemed to be playing with a spirit sword. Suddenly, the violet-clothed young man woke up. It's about time. The violet-clothed young man opened his eyes that were like dazzling stars, and a heartfelt smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Only a drop of Monkey King wine is sufficient to allow me to directly break through to the void prying stage. After cultivating for many days, I finally accumulated my origin energy to the limit. This violet-clothed young man was precisely Duan Lingtian, who'd left Black Wind City 11 months ago. During these 11 months of time, relying on his peerlessly monstrous natural talent, his gains were extremely great. Of course, it was mainly the gains in his cultivation. Presently, his cultivation had already risen to the limit of the half-step void stage, and he was half a step into the void prying stage. He was only a strand away from smoothly breaking through. However, even if it was only a strand, if he didn't have the help of external forces, it would be difficult to break through in a short period of time. Just like the group of half-step void stage martial artists in the Crimson Sky Kingdom, there was no lack of existences that were half a step into the void prying stage, but because of this strand of difference, they might have no fate with the void prying stage for their entire lifetimes. However, Duan Lingtian didn't have to worry. Although with his natural talent, even if he relied on his own hard work, he would be able to smoothly break through to the void prying stage sooner or later. But now that there was a shortcut to take, he naturally wouldn't miss it. Monkey King wine. With a raise of his hand, Duan Lingtian took out a drop of Monkey King wine. The Monkey King wine was precisely what he'd obtained in the Hungduan mountain range outside the southern barbaric city of the Southern Champion Kingdom, and it was given to him by the great Monkey King of the group of stone monkeys. The Monkey King wine had the medicinal strength of the Void Advancement Pill, yet it didn't have the side effects of the Void Advancement Pill. Chapter 493. Squeak, squeak. Duan Lingtian had only just taken out the Monkey King wine when the little gold mouse that stood on his shoulder cried out excitedly. Obviously, it was filled with interest towards the Monkey King wine. Big brother Lingtian, what wine is this? Only the fragrance of the wine has caused the origin energy in my body to become restless. The little gold mouse stared eagerly at the drop of Monkey King wine in Duan Lingtian's hand as it asked via voice transmission, "You little fellow, open your mouth." Duan Lingtian shook his head, then with a raise of his hand, he directly shot the drop of Monkey King wine into the little gold mouse's mouth. Instantly, the little gold mouse shuddered, then lay on Duan Lingtian's shoulder before closing her jade-green eyes and starting to cultivate. She was digesting the medicinal strength of the Monkey King wine. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled when he saw the little gold mouse immersed in cultivation. Then he withdrew another drop of Monkey King wine and swallowed it. Instantly, the overbearing medicinal strength of the Monkey King wine started to wreak havoc within Duan Lingtian's body, desiring to strengthen Duan Lingtian's origin energy. But unfortunately, Duan Lingtian's origin energy had already arrived at the limit of the half-step void stage. Now, it had even been accumulated to the limit by Duan Lingtian. So, at the same time that the medicinal strength of the Monkey King wine strengthened Duan Lingtian's origin energy, it also urged the transformation of the origin energy in Duan Lingtian's body to a certain extent. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Lightning WIRM Form. The Lightning WIRM form was the 5th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, and it was a cultivation method that corresponded to the void prying stage. After Duan Lingtian's cultivation broke through to the half-step void stage, the 4th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, the Wind WIRM form, had already been cultivated to the limit. If he wanted to improve it again, then he must cultivate the 5th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, the Lightning WIRM form. Along with Duan Lingtian circulating the mental cultivation method of the 5th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, the origin energy in his body started to intensely tremble, and it even showed signs of collapsing. Of course, it wasn't a true breakdown. As the saying goes, a phoenix reborn from the ashes and reborn from the ashes. Duan Lingtian's elemental energy was also undergoing a similar transformation. Duan Lingtian was immersed in his cultivation. The mental cultivation method of the Lightning Flood Dragon transformation was constantly circulating. He did not know how much time had passed. It felt like only a moment had passed, but it also felt like years had passed. Finally, under the influence of the Monkey King wine, the origin energy in his body began to tremble. In the end, it underwent a qualitative change. The elemental energy that had undergone a qualitative change continuously flowed into Duan Lingtian's dantian. At the center of Duan Lingtian's dantian, the nascent soul that was condensed from origin energy suddenly expanded and became slightly illusory at the same time. Void prying stage. When he looked at the nascent soul that had enlarged and become illusory, Duan Lingtian knew that he'd broken through to the void prying stage. The void prying stage was the first stage of the void stage, and it belonged to the entry stage. There were 4 great stages of the void stage, and every stage had a chasm that was difficult to surmount. The difference in strength was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. For example, a 9th-level void prying stage martial artist was only able to exert the strength of 1 ancient horned dragon and 2,000 ancient mammoths by relying solely on origin energy. Whereas a 1st-level void initiation stage martial artist was only able to exert the strength of 2 ancient horned dragons by relying solely on origin energy. The difference between the two was the strength of an entire 8,000 ancient mammoths. Of course, the further one progressed, the greater the gap became. "I've finally broken through." Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and slowly opened his eyes. A bright light flashed within his eyes, and it was like a shooting star that flashed by. What a formidable strength! Duan Lingtian lightly clenched his fist, and his origin energy jumped about as he could feel the surging strength contained within it. Whoosh! In the sky above Duan Lingtian, 2011 ancient mammoth silhouettes slowly condensed into form. When an ordinary first-level void prying stage martial artist only used origin energy, their strength was comparable to the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths, whereas Duan Lingtian instead possessed the strength of 11 ancient mammoths, more than a martial artist with the same cultivation. This was the patent that the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique granted to him in the past. However, along with the increase of his strength, the effect of this patent grew smaller and smaller. After all, before the strength of 1,000 ancient mammoths, the strength of 11 ancient mammoths seemed to be insignificant. My spiritual force. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian started inspecting his spiritual force. In the end, Duan Lingtian helplessly noticed that his spiritual force actually didn't increase in the slightest. It was still the same as before, only at the first level of the void-prying stage. It's waiting for my cultivation to synchronize with it? Duan Lingtian laughed bitterly. He originally thought that along with his breakthrough to the void-prying stage, his spiritual force would have a breakthrough as well. Unexpectedly, his spiritual force had always been on the spot. 1 year ago, he was only a 6th-level nascent soul stage martial artist, and his spiritual force was at the first level of the void-prying stage. Now, he'd broken through to the first level of the void-prying stage, but his spiritual force was still at the first level of the void-prying stage. Looks like spiritual force that isn't improved by consuming spirit fruits that increase spiritual force won't increase stably along with the advancement of one's cultivation. In the end, Duan Lingtian could only make wild guesses himself. After all, he was in such a situation now. Never mind. Even if my spiritual force didn't increase, my cultivation has increased to the first level of the void-prying stage after all, and it can be considered to be a good thing. Perhaps I'm still too greedy. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian relaxed his mentality and didn't fuss about it anymore. Presently, my spiritual force and cultivation have synchronized. In the future, so long as my cultivation increases, my spiritual force will increase correspondingly. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and he wanted to continue advancing towards a higher level even more. But he knew as well that he'd only just broken through to the first level of the void-prying stage now, and his foundation was unstable, let alone charging towards a higher level of cultivation. The 6-9 heavenly tribulation has arrived so quickly? In next to no time, Duan Lingtian felt his heart palpitate for no reason or rhyme, and a thought abruptly emerged within his mind. This was the sign of the 6-9 heavenly tribulation. Every human or demon beast that had just broken through to the void-prying stage would have to experience this moment. Duan Lingtian, who'd fused with the lifetime worth of memories of Emperor Wu of Samsara, wasn't surprised by this. Around 10 days. During this period of time, I'll properly prepare to welcome the baptism of the 6-9 heavenly tribulation. My Tempest Point still needs to rely on it. Duan Lingtian abruptly stood up, and his fierce gaze looked towards the distance. Along with the clouds and mist dispersing, an enormous city that stood there for a long time appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes, and it was like a demon beast that had been in deep slumber for a long time and would awaken at any moment. That place was precisely the imperial city of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. There's still some time, and it's just nice that I can head to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy after overcoming the 6-9 heavenly tribulation, Duan Lingtian decided in his heart. After a short moment, Duan Lingtian's figure flashed out and abruptly flashed towards the distance. Whirlwind. At this instant, his entire body seemed to have transformed into a swift gale that swept through the clouds and mist on the peak of this mountain to the point of roiling. Whoosh! In next to no time, Duan Lingtian pointed out with a raise of his hand. The origin energy within it condensed and flickered with strands of azure-colored energy, and its might was shocking. Whoosh! In next to no time, a milky white beam of light shot out from the tip of the finger that Duan Lingtian pointed out, and the azure-colored energy coiled around it like a small azure snake that accompanied the white beam of light as it shot out. Bang! The white beam of light shot onto an enormous rock at the side of the mountain peak, and the small azure snake swept out, causing the enormous rock to shatter into pieces, causing shattered rocks to flutter in the air and dust to suffuse the air. Presently, I've grasped wind force, yet I know nothing about lightning force. This Tempest Point hasn't even stepped into the initial stage. But Tempest Point is a high-grade Earth-rank martial skill after all. Even if it hasn't stepped into the initial stage, once wind force is fused into it, its might is far from something that Dragon's finishing touch can compare to. Duan Lingtian's gaze abruptly lit up. Tempest Point was a high-grade Earth-rank martial skill, and it was a set of martial skills that came along with the 5th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique. the lightning WIRM form. It stressed upon utilizing wind force and lightning force to complement each other to execute a formidable attack. Tempest Point caused gods and ghosts to wail. This was the Samsara Emperor Wu's annotation towards Tempest Point. Wind is adept in speed, and its attacks are swift and fierce. Although the speed of lightning is inferior to wind, it isn't much inferior. Moreover, the explosive force of lightning is far stronger than wind. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. A martial skill that complemented each other with wind and lightning was obvious, and its might would surely be extremely shocking. Presently, I can be considered to have preliminarily comprehended half-step advanced wind force, whereas I haven't even touched the surface of lightning force. I only hope that when the 6-9 heavenly tribulation arrives, I'll be able to rely on the energy of the tribulation lightning to comprehend lightning force. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian glanced at the little gold mouse that was still cultivating on his shoulder. He still remembered that when the little gold mouse overcame the 6-9 heavenly tribulation that day, the 6th bolt of tribulation lightning was directly swallowed by her. Not only that, she'd even relied on the energy of the tribulation lightning to successfully comprehend lightning force. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary lightning force, but a half-step advanced lightning force. Whereas now, the little gold mouse had relied on the natural talent of the jade-eyed, heavenly mouse clan to perfectly comprehend advanced lightning force, and her comprehension of lightning force could be considered to have stepped into the perfection stage. Of course, after advanced lightning force, there was still lightning concept. That was what the little gold mouse needed to rely on the advanced lightning force to comprehend now. According to the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu and the records of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique, when the 6-9 heavenly tribulation arrives, I don't have to swallow the tribulation lightning like little gold. Of course, even if I wanted to swallow it, I don't have the ability. Duan Lingtian could imagine that if he dared open his mouth and swallow the tribulation lightning like little gold, then the one that suffered misfortune would absolutely be him. The tribulation lightning wasn't something that anyone could swallow. Presently, I've comprehended half-step advanced wind force, and whirlwind can be considered to have officially stepped into the mastery stage. Once I comprehend advanced wind force, I can be considered to have cultivated whirlwind to the perfection stage. As Duan Lingtian thought, his figure flashed out like a gale that ceaselessly swept past. For a time, dust suffused the peak of the mountain as the clouds and mist dispersed. 9 days later, it's finally here? Duan Lingtian raised his head to look at the horizon. The clouds and mist in the horizon were ceaselessly being compressed before finally transforming into a ceaselessly revolving vortex. Chapter 494. At the center of the vortex that was squeezed from the clouds and mist that covered the sky, a ball of dark clouds was ceaselessly brewing and roiling. Hiss, 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 hiss. Violet-colored lightning ceaselessly raged, and it was like numerous little snakes that were dancing about, dazzling and resplendent. But Duan Lingtian didn't have the mood to pay attention to all this now. Whirlwind! Duan Lingtian's figure flashed out, and he seemed to have transformed into a gale that blew towards the horizon. Duan Lingtian soared up into the sky, and his movements were skilled without the slightest jerkiness. If it was an ordinary martial artist that had just broken through to the void-prying stage, the martial artist would at least need to familiarize himself with flying for a period of time before being able to fly. But Duan Lingtian was different. Duan Lingtian had fused with the lifetime worth of memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, so he was extremely familiar with the technique of flying. He easily floated in the sky, and he utterly didn't seem like a martial artist that had just broken through to the void-prying stage. Now that Little Gold is here as well, the 6-9 heavenly tribulation will descend with 12 bolts of tribulation lightning. I wonder if I'll be able to smoothly comprehend half-step advanced lightning force by relying on 12 bolts of tribulation lightning. Duan Lingtian looked up at the sky, and the violet-colored lightning within the dark clouds had brewed to the limit, and the first bolt of tribulation lightning would descend at any moment. Duan Lingtian's ambition was extremely great. He wanted to comprehend half-step advanced lightning force in one go. According to the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu and the records of the fifth form of the Nine Dragon War Sovereign technique, the lightning WIRM form, so long as he utilized wind force to execute the tempest point to resist the tribulation lightning, he would be able to rely on it to comprehend lightning force. According to the deductions of Samsara Emperor Wu, he would at most comprehend elementary lightning force. Presently, the little gold mouse lay on Duan Lingtian's shoulder as she cultivated. Although she hadn't awakened, because she hadn't left Duan Lingtian by 100 meters, every time the 6-9 heavenly tribulation descended, it would duplicate an additional bolt of tribulation lightning that targeted the little gold mouse. Duan Lingtian intended to withstand the 6 bolts of tribulation lightning that targeted the little gold mouse as well. It had to be said that Duan Lingtian's idea was crazy. Finally, in the dark clouds on the horizon, the lightning accumulated to the limit and condensed into a bolt of lightning as thick as a baby's arm. Boom! The lightning struck down from the sky, carrying with it an astonishing power. It was aimed directly at Duan Lingtian. It was the first lightning tribulation. In practically the blink of an eye, another bolt of tribulation lightning descended, and the target of this bolt of tribulation lightning was the little gold mouse that was cultivating on Duan Lingtian's shoulder. Humph! Duan Lingtian's gaze turned cold as he fearlessly stepped forward. Tempest finger. Duan Lingtian raised his hand and pointed out with his finger, his strength exploding. Whoosh! The milky white elemental energy beam condensed together and shot out with a whistling sound. His target was the lightning tribulation that was descending first. The surroundings of the elemental energy beam were coiled with strands of azure-colored energy, and they were like numerous little azure-colored snakes that were swimming about. It was precisely the half-step advanced wind force that Duan Lingtian had comprehended. After he pointed out with his finger, Duan Lingtian was dissatisfied with being negligent. Tempest finger. He pointed out with his finger once more, and the same elemental energy beam pierced towards the other bolt of tribulation lightning. Bang! Bang! 2 enormous bangs sounded out in practically an instant, and it was the incomplete tempest finger executed by Duan Lingtian that easily destroyed the 2 bolts of tribulation lightning. Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief, and he looked at the horizon with a solemn expression. Although he'd easily stopped the first bolt of tribulation lightning, he knew that the truly formidable lightning tribulation was still behind. He'd witnessed the little gold mouse overcoming the tribulation with his own 2 eyes that day. Bang! In next to no time, the second bolt of tribulation lightning condensed into form and descended with a bang. Bang! Another bolt of tribulation lightning with a similar might followed closely behind. Another 2 bolts of tribulation lightning, one headed straight for Duan Lingtian, and the other headed straight for the little gold mouse. But the little gold mouse was still cultivating now, and only Duan Lingtian could rely on himself to forcefully resist these 2 bolts of tribulation lightning. Swish! Swish! He pointed out with 2 fingers once more, and the milky white beam of light that was coiled by wind force shot out through the tempest finger executed by Duan Lingtian to intercept the 2 bolts of tribulation lightning. Bang! Bang! The 2 bolts of tribulation lightning were destroyed once more. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian felt his vital energy and blood roil. The strength of 2 bolts of tribulation lightning is extremely strong as expected. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and continued to look up at the sky. He was waiting for the 3rd bolt of tribulation lightning. Earlier, Duan Lingtian had a certain amount of gains from successively withstanding 4 bolts of tribulation lightning. Every time he executed the tempest finger and pointed towards the bolt of tribulation lightning, he could clearly feel the changes in the lightning within the tribulation lightning. Lightning, violent, raging, and possessed shocking might. Bang! The 3rd bolt of tribulation lightning arrived as scheduled. Bang! Behind it, another bolt of tribulation lightning tailed over. Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold. Tempest finger. With a raise of his hand, Duan Lingtian pointed out with his finger, and the beam of origin energy that was coiled by wind force instantly swept towards the bolt of tribulation lightning in the lead. Bang! The bolt of tribulation lightning and the beam of origin energy exploded at almost the exact same time, then transformed into nothingness. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian's internal organs trembled, and he felt his vital energy and blood roil. The might of the third bolt of tribulation lightning is actually so strong. When he saw another bolt of tribulation lightning flashing over from behind, and it was temporarily impossible for him to execute a second tempest finger, Duan Lingtian chose to dodge. Whirlwind. Duan Lingtian's figure flashed as if he'd transformed into a gale, and it was even more like he was racing with that bolt of tribulation lightning. But even though his speed was swift, the speed of the tribulation lightning was swifter. However, Duan Lingtian didn't intend to pull apart the distance between him and the tribulation lightning, because he knew that it wasn't realistic. The reason he chose to dodge was only for the sake of catching his breath. After all, after he executed Tempest Finger to forcefully resist the third bolt of tribulation lightning, the origin energy within his body had collapsed, and it was difficult for him to gather it in a short period of time, making it difficult for him to condense it to execute Tempest Finger once more. Whereas now, he'd caught his breath. Tempest Finger. Duan Lingtian abruptly turned around and pointed out with his finger, causing piercing howls to explode out as the airflow in the air moved rhythmically to split into two. Swish. A beam of origin energy that contained half-step advanced wind force shot out and fiercely collided with the bolt of tribulation lightning. Bang! Another enormous bang sounded out. At the same time that Duan Lingtian felt his vital energy and blood roil once more, this bolt of tribulation lightning that pursued the little gold mouse was finally resisted by him. Right at this moment, bang, bang, two thunderclaps sounded out one after the other as they descended from the horizon. The fourth bolt of tribulation lightning descended with a bang. This time, Duan Lingtian repeated the same trick and successfully resisted two bolts of tribulation lightning. But even then, he still suffered a light injury. Fortunately, his injuries weren't heavy, and after he consumed a healing medicinal pill, he recovered in the blink of an eye. Lightning. Duan Lingtian looked up at the sky, and before the appearance of the fifth bolt of tribulation lightning, he'd comprehended something. Earlier, he'd successively resisted numerous bolts of tribulation lightning, and especially when he used Tempest Finger to collide head-on with the tribulation lightning. To a certain extent, it allowed Duan Lingtian to have a clear understanding of the characteristics of lightning. Hiss. With a command in Duan Lingtian's heart, besides the fierce wind force, there was actually an additional strand of unstable violet-colored energy on the origin energy that jumped about on the tip of his finger. Lightning Force Seed? Duan Lingtian's gaze abruptly lit up, as he knew that he'd already taken the first step. The Lightning Force Seed was the foundation of Lightning Force. Comprehending the Lightning Force Seed also meant that he would soon be able to truly comprehend Lightning Force. The fifth bolt of tribulation lightning? Come. Duan Lingtian looked up at the sky with an expression of anticipation. He believed that now that he'd comprehended the Lightning Force Seed, so long as he continued to come into close contact with the tribulation lightning, he would surely be able to comprehend true lightning force. This was something he was extremely confident of. Bang, bang. Accompanied by two terrifying sounds of thunder descending, the thick lightning bolts crashed down like two meteors falling from the horizon. Tempest Finger. Duan Lingtian soared into the sky to intercept the first bolt of tribulation lightning, and he pointed out with his finger. Swish. This time, besides the fierce azure-colored energy coiled around the origin energy beam that shot out from the tip of Duan Lingtian's finger, there was an additional strand of light violet-colored energy, and it was precisely the Lightning Force Seed. Duan Lingtian had a feeling. The Tempest Finger he executed now couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as before. Right now, the Wind and Lightning Finger had both Wind Force and Lightning Force. Even though the latter was only a Lightning Force Seed, it was sufficient to allow the Tempest Finger to advance to a new level. So long as the Lightning Force Seed is able to transform into true Lightning Force, then my Tempest Finger will officially step into the initial stage. At the same time that Duan Lingtian pointed out with his finger, he thought in his heart. In the blink of an eye, the origin energy beam shot out from Duan Lingtian's finger. The Tempest Finger that had just taken form collided with the fifth bolt of tribulation lightning and emitted an enormous bang. The airflow in the air flashed as the sound of air exploding rose and fell continuously. Pooh! At the instant the tempest finger collided with the tribulation lightning, the violent energy contained within the tribulation lightning shook Duan Lingtian's internal organs to the point of trembling, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Duan Lingtian's injuries weren't light. Bang! Right when Duan Lingtian's body was on the verge of collapse, another bolt of tribulation lightning that targeted the little gold mouse descended. This bolt of tribulation lightning was copied from the foundation of the fifth bolt of tribulation lightning of the 6-9 heavenly tribulation, and its might was extremely strong. For a time, not to mention condensing his origin energy once more, Duan Lingtian, who was heavily injured at this moment, was even slightly unable to catch his breath. Whirlwind? Duan Lingtian gritted his teeth and wanted to execute his movement technique to dodge. But, even with the assistance of half-step advanced wind force, the speed of his scattered origin energy was far inferior to this bolt of tribulation lightning. Little gold. Duan Lingtian's face went grim, and he couldn't be bothered to care that the little gold mouse was still cultivating as he directly sent a voice transmission into the little gold mouse's ears. At practically the instant he sent the voice transmission, the bolt of tribulation lightning had already descended towards him. Although the target of the tribulation lightning was only the little gold mouse, the little gold mouse was still on his shoulder. But the little gold mouse was lying on his shoulder, so for a time, he'd become the target of the tribulation lightning as well. The tribulation lightning was high up in the sky as its terrifying aura enveloped down, and it practically sealed Duan Lingtian within it, causing Duan Lingtian to feel as if he was within a thunderstorm. What entered his eyes was a dazzling scene, and the aura of lightning carried along the might of nature as it swept over. At this instant, Duan Lingtian abruptly closed his eyes and seemed to have comprehended something. This is lightning? At this moment, Duan Lingtian had even forgotten that he was in a dangerous situation, and he still silently savored the aura of lightning as he comprehended the characteristics of lightning and everything about lightning. The lightning force seed that Duan Lingtian had comprehended was silently strengthening. The bolt of tribulation lightning was about to blast onto Duan Lingtian. Squeak, squeak. Chapter 495. Amidst her sharp cry, the little gold mouse transformed into an exceedingly swift golden light that left Duan Lingtian's shoulder and shot towards the horizon. Whereas the bolt of tribulation lightning that descended with a bang turned around above Duan Lingtian's head and chased after the little gold mouse. The little gold mouse stopped moving and stood in midair. As she looked at the bolt of tribulation lightning that flashed over, the little gold mouse's jade-green eyes contained slight disdain mixed within. Bang! The bolt of tribulation lightning charged menacingly directly towards the little gold mouse. The bolt of tribulation lightning was about to strike the little gold mouse. Squeak! The little gold mouse's body didn't even enlarge as she opened her mouth and let out a sharp cry. Instantly, the air trembled, and the surrounding airflow started to flash towards the little gold mouse's mouth like a bolt of lightning, whereas the bolt of tribulation lightning was swallowed into the little gold mouse's stomach without the slightest delay. The thunder was loud, but the rain was small. In the blink of an eye, the bolt of tribulation lightning that approached menacingly had become food in the little gold mouse's stomach. Squeak, squeak. The little gold mouse rubbed her bulging stomach as she looked complacently at Duan Lingtian, wanting to take credit. In next to no time, she noticed that Duan Lingtian stood there like a block of wood without the slightest reaction, and she instantly drooped her little head in slight dejection. Bang! Bang! The dark clouds in the horizon roiled as the sixth bolt of tribulation lightning of the 6-9 heavenly tribulation, which was also the last bolt of tribulation lightning, had finally condensed into form and descended with a bang. Accompanying its descent was another bolt of tribulation lightning that possessed might not inferior to it. Squeak, squeak. The little gold mouse's eyes glowed as she flashed out to approach Duan Lingtian and wait for the descent of the two bolts of tribulation lightning. The first bolt of tribulation lightning descended with a bang like a falling meteor, and its target was Duan Lingtian. Squeak! But, even though the bolt of tribulation lightning came menacingly, it was swallowed into the little gold mouse's stomach without the slightest delay when she opened her mouth. Subsequently, The little gold mouse's gaze descended onto the bolt of tribulation lightning at the back. Right when the little gold mouse opened her mouth once more with the intention of swallowing the last bolt of tribulation lightning. Little gold, leave this bolt of tribulation lightning to me. Duan Lingtian woke up, and as soon as he opened his eyes, his body moved. As swift as the wind, as shocking as thunder. In the blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian soared into the sky to greet the final bolt of lightning that descended with a bang. Now, it's time to test the might of the lightning force I just comprehended. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled up into a smile. His gaze suddenly focused as he raised his hand, his sleeve fluttering as he pointed out with his finger. His yuan power condensed with an awe-inspiring might that seemed capable of piercing through everything. Tempest Finger. A light beam shot out from Duan Lingtian's fingertip. It was intertwined with strands of green and purple gang qi. The purple gang qi was slightly weaker, but not by much. The beam of origin energy was accompanied by wind force and lightning force as it swept out, and it formed the true tempest force. Whoosh! The tempest point shot out with an ear-piercing screech. The airflow in the air moved as it fiercely hit the last tribulation lightning. Bang! An enormous bang sounded out as the last tribulation lightning was directly shattered by Duan Lingtian's finger, and it transformed into nothingness. On the other hand, Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged, and he was calm and composed. His internal organs only trembled slightly. At this moment, beside the 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes in the sky above Duan Lingtian, another 1,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes had appeared, amongst the 1,000 ancient mammoths that had been added. Amongst them, the strength of 500 ancient mammoths belonged to Wind Force, half-step advanced wind force. The strength of the other 500 ancient mammoths belonged to lightning force, half-step advanced lightning force. Duan Lingtian had gotten his wish and comprehended half-step advanced lightning force. I have to thank the fifth tribulation lightning that replicated the lightning tribulation that blasted towards Little Gold that I was able to comprehend half-step advanced lightning force. At the same time that Duan Lingtian had a slight lingering fear in his heart when he thought of what happened earlier, he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. That tribulation lightning flashed directly towards him. If the little gold mouse didn't make a move in time, he would surely die. At that moment, he even slightly regretted why he was so arrogant and didn't use a spirit sword since the beginning. Of course, Duan Lingtian didn't use a spirit sword for the sake of being able to use Tempest Point to resist the tribulation lightning and comprehend lightning force while resisting the tribulation lightning. Even though Tempest Point could be executed with a spirit sword, and its might was similarly great, but its effect would be greatly reduced. Tempest Point was a finger technique martial skill after all. Executing it with the finger was the way of the king. Right when Duan Lingtian was enveloped by the energy of the tribulation lightning and was about to be blasted by the tribulation lightning. Unknowingly, Duan Lingtian had a clear comprehension of the characteristics of lightning and everything about lightning. This sort of comprehension was similar to sudden enlightenment, yet it wasn't completely sudden enlightenment. After all, he'd already developed a lightning force seed. Just like that time, he didn't know anything about wind force, and then he directly comprehended wind force in one go. That could be called a true epiphany. Whereas this time, Duan Lingtian mostly relied on the tribulation lightning and relied on Tempest Point to allow his lightning force seed to grow into half-step advanced lightning force in a short period of time. Half-step advanced wind force, half-step advanced lightning force. Presently, my Tempest Point can already be considered to have broken through to the mastery stage. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and an excited expression couldn't help but appear on his face. This was something he'd never expected beforehand. Tempest Point was a high-grade Earth-rank martial skill that came with the fifth form of the Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique, the Lightning WYRM form, and its might was extraordinary. Whereas the advancement of one's cultivation was extremely difficult, and it was different from ordinary high-grade Earth-rank martial skills. For ordinary high-grade Earth-rank martial skills, so long as one's force was improved, then one's cultivation could be improved along with it. Just like the high-grade Earth-rank movement technique Duan Lingtian cultivated, Whirlwind. So long as one's wind force was improved to a certain extent, then Whirlwind would be able to improve along with it. Presently, Duan Lingtian had comprehended half-step advanced wind force, and whirlwind had improved to the mastery stage along with it. Whereas Tempest Point instead required wind force and lightning force to improve at the same time before it could complete the advancement of its cultivation. Just like before. Even though Duan Lingtian had comprehended half-step advanced wind force, because he hadn't comprehended lightning force, even if he executed the Tempest Point, it would still be an incomplete Tempest Point, and it was even to the extent that it hadn't even stepped into the initial stage. The Tempest Point's cultivation required both wind force and lightning force to satisfy the conditions at the same time before it could be improved. Just like now, Duan Lingtian's wind force and lightning force were both half-step advanced force, and the Tempest Point he executed when they complemented each other could be considered to have stepped into the mastery stage. Whereas if he wanted to cultivate Tempest Point to the perfection stage, then he must cultivate both wind force and lightning force to the advanced stage at the same time. My Tempest Point is sufficient to crush any high-grade Earth rank martial skill of the same cultivation. This was something Duan Lingtian was extremely confident in. What a joke. Tempest Point was a high-grade Earth rank martial skill that came along with the 9 Dragon War Sovereign technique, and its might wasn't inferior to any high-grade Earth rank martial skill in the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu. After all, this was a martial skill that utilized 2 types of force complementing each other. A high-grade Earth rank martial skill like this was extremely rare. Even in the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, there weren't many martial skills like this. Finally, Duan Lingtian returned to his senses, and he looked at the little gold mouse that descended on his shoulder as he said with a smile, "Little Gold, looks like you're not far away from breaking through to the next level. I thought you would be able to rely on the medicinal strength of the Monkey King wine to break through this time. Big brother Lingtian, give me some more." The little gold mouse looked eagerly at Duan Lingtian, and her jade green eyes were filled with yearning. "We'll talk about it in the future." Duan Lingtian lightly shook his head, then his brows raised as his gaze descended onto the vast city behind the clouds and mist in the distance. "We ought to enter the city. Once the Dragon and Phoenix Academy is settled down, I'll give you 2 more drops of Monkey King wine, and they're the last 2 drops. Big brother Lingtian, you're too stingy." The little gold mouse once again sent a voice transmission, and she was slightly unhappy. "It's not that I'm stingy, but this Monkey King wine is the same as spirit fruits. After consuming it once and consuming it later on, its effects will decrease infinitely. No matter how much I give you, it's still a waste. Moreover, I don't have much Monkey King wine in my possession." Duan Lingtian shook his head and revealed a bitter smile. "Does this little gold really think that the Monkey King wine in my possession is an ordinary wine that I can have as much as I want?" The little gold mouse went silent for a moment when she heard Duan Lingtian. Then she started jumping for joy, like a child that hadn't grown up. "Let's go. Enter the city." Duan Lingtian brought along the little gold mouse as his figure flashed out towards the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Duan Lingtian only descended from the sky when they arrived outside the entrance of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Meanwhile, many void-prying stage martial artists that had similarly descended noticed Duan Lingtian. At the beginning, they didn't pay much attention to him, but when they saw Duan Lingtian's appearance clearly, they were instead dumbstruck. This young man looks to be less than 25 years old, yet he's actually already a void-prying stage martial artist? A void-prying stage martial artist couldn't help but gulp down a mouthful of saliva as he spoke in astonishment. "Impossible, right? The head of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's 5 great young masters, Crazy Young Master, had only just stepped into the void-prying stage at the age of 29. His companion shook his head and didn't dare believe it. Could it be that he took good care of himself? The former was surprised and bewildered. "It's possible." The latter nodded in all seriousness. Waves of similar discussions sounded out from the mouths of the void-prying stage martial artists that saw Duan Lingtian descend from the sky. Duan Lingtian naturally heard it as well, and he was speechless. Took good care of himself? To think that they were able to think of it. However, they did remind me. In the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, there are indeed many methods of taking good care of oneself, but most of them are assisted by spirit medicines. If it's a woman or a martial artist that has stepped into the void-prying stage or above, it wouldn't be so troublesome. Duan Lingtian flashed through the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu and thought in his heart, that deadbeat father of mine is 50 years old, yet looks to be around 30 years old. There's only two possibilities. Firstly, he consumed a spirit medicine that slows down the aging of one's appearance. Secondly, he once broke through to the void-prying stage. Chapter 496. As for women, perhaps it was because the heavens had bestowed upon men various advantages over women, so they compensated women in other aspects. So long as women took care of themselves, they were able to slow down aging to a certain extent. Just like Duan Lingtian's mother, Li Ro, even though she was a little over 40 years old, she looked as if she wasn't even 30 years old yet. This was the innate advantage of women. So long as one's cultivation steps into the void-prying stage, even though it's not to the extent of rejuvenating oneself, but so long as one intends, one can use origin energy to control aging to a certain extent. It's even to the extent that martial artists at the void-prying stage and above still have the appearance of a middle-aged man when they die of old age 100 years later. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Presently, the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu ceaselessly flashed within his mind. So long as one has the patience to frequently use origin energy to activate one's flesh and skin, the higher one's cultivation is, the better one can slow down aging. During the first lifetime of Samsara Emperor Wu, his cultivation stepped into the Emperor Wu stage, and he was already 120 years old. But at that time, merely based on his outer appearance, he was only a middle-aged man around the age of 50. Through the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, Duan Lingtian found out about the appearance of Samsara Emperor Wu before he underwent samsara. As for the second lifetime of Samsara Emperor Wu, before he underwent samsara, he was 113 years old, and his outer appearance was only a young man around the age of 30. Duan Lingtian's mood surged. 113 years old, yet looked like a young man around the age of 30. What sort of concept was this? Of course, Duan Lingtian knew the reason Samsara Emperor Wu was able to maintain such a young appearance during his second lifetime. During his second lifetime of Samsara Emperor Wu, his cultivation had already broken through to the void-prying stage at the age of 25. Since that time, Samsara Emperor Wu intentionally used origin energy to slow down his aging. Later on, Samsara Emperor Wu found the treasures he left behind during his first lifetime, and he stepped into the void initiation stage, void interpretation stage, and even the void transformation stage at an extremely fast speed. Later on, the rebirth martial emperor even became a martial monarch when he was 50 years old by relying on the experience of his first lifetime. At the age of 60, he successfully became Emperor Wu. The achievements of the reincarnation Emperor Wu in his second lifetime, especially the time he spent to become Emperor Wu, could be said to be unprecedented on Cloud Continent. At the very least, in the history of Cloud Continent, there had never been such a young Emperor Wu. Once one becomes a martial emperor, although one can't rejuvenate their youth, they can retain their youth forever. If the Emperor Wu of the Samsara era had become a martial emperor 10 years earlier, he might have been able to maintain his appearance when he was 26 or 27 years old. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as he thought in his heart. Martial artists at the void-prying stage and above mostly can't be judged by appearance and age. Even if a martial artist at the void-prying stage and above didn't intentionally use origin energy to slow down their aging, their formidable origin energy is still able to unintentionally slow down their aging, and their aging speed is far slower than ordinary martial artists. Duan Lingtian shook his head and withdrew his thoughts. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian disregarded the surprised gazes from the surroundings as he walked with large strides towards the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial city. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial city was boundlessly vast and imposing, and it was like an enormous beast that lay there. The wide open door was like the bloody maw of this enormous beast, and it ceaselessly swallowed people into its stomach. On both sides of the door was a row of armored soldiers guarding there. They stood ramrod straight, and their gazes didn't contain the slightest expression as they looked coldly and indifferently ahead. Duan Lingtian slowly walked into the city, and the little gold mouse on his shoulder looked around with interest. The cute little gold mouse drew the gazes of many people. These people were mostly women and children. "Mom, what a cute little gold mouse." An immature voice sounded out from the side, and it was naive and unaffected. Duan Lingtian slightly turned his head and saw an ordinary woman carrying a little boy as she walked nearby. "Young master," the child speaks without thinking. "I hope you can forgive him." The woman hurriedly covered the little boy's mouth, and she had a terrified expression as she bowed and apologized to Duan Lingtian.
"It's fine."
Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. He naturally guessed why the woman had such a reaction. The violet clothes he wore weren't ordinary cloth, but were instead made from special silk that was worth 1,000 gold coins. Obviously, the woman discerned that he was extraordinary from the clothes he wore. Duan Lingtian didn't know. This woman didn't merely discern that he was extraordinary from the clothes he wore. The bearing he unintentionally emitted coupled with his clothes gave the woman the feeling that he was a respected existence that couldn't be offended. This world is like this. There's a clear distinction between ranks. Before these ordinary people, I'm different and high above. However, in front of the current me, those experts at the ascension stage and above are similarly high and mighty. The woman's reaction caused Duan Lingtian to sigh with emotion. He knew that only by standing at the peak and becoming a person above others would he be able to make this feeling vanish. Otherwise, there would always be someone that stood higher than him and was able to look down upon him. Duan Lingtian's heart of an expert had unknowingly become more tenacious. Squeak, squeak, the little gold mouse suddenly cried out, and at the same time, a voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. "Big brother Lingtian, I'm hungry. I want to eat meat. I want to eat meat." Duan Lingtian lowered his head and rolled his eyes at the little gold mouse. "You little fellow, you're really a foodie." Even though he said this, Duan Lingtian still found a restaurant. The restaurant was incomparably luxurious, and it was far from something a small restaurant could compare to. It was only close to mealtime now, and the customers within the restaurant had just increased. Duan Lingtian occupied 2 tables by himself. "Customer, do you need anything?" The restaurant's attendant came over to greet Duan Lingtian and warmly entertained him. "Fill that table with various fragrant stir-fried meat. As for my table, just casually serve some of your restaurant's signature dishes and a jug of wine." Duan Lingtian chose a seat by the window and sat down. Then he pointed at the empty table beside him as he spoke to the attendant. "Yes, customer," the attendant replied and left with a face full of smiles. He loved to entertain this sort of frank customer the most. As for Duan Lingtian asking for 2 tables and only ordering stir-fried meat for the empty table, he didn't feel it was strange. He only thought that this customer still had companions that hadn't come, and this customer's companions preferred to eat meat. When the dishes were served and he saw the little gold mouse on Duan Lingtian's shoulder fly out to sweep away the stir-fried meat on the single table, the attendant was completely dumbstruck. As an attendant in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City, he felt that he'd seen much of the world. But it was truly the first time he'd seen someone so extravagantly ordering a table of stir-fried meat for a pet mouse to eat. The world of the rich is really not something we can understand. Even if it's the young masters and young misses of the great clans in the Imperial City, I've seen many of them, but I've never seen them so extravagant. The attendant couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Meanwhile, the table the little gold mouse sat at attracted attention as expected. Extravagant. Too extravagant. This is the Drifting Fragrance Restaurant. That table of stir-fried meat would at least cost 100 silver. 100 silver for a pet mouse's meal? Squandering. Too squandering. I wonder which young master is from to actually squander like this. Even if he has money, he shouldn't spend it like this. For a time, the crowd of customers in the restaurant whispered in discussion. "Haha, little gold. Looks like they all think you're only a pet mouse?" Duan Lingtian remained indifferent when he heard the whispers of these people, and he couldn't help but send a voice transmission to tease the little gold mouse. Squeak, squeak, the little gold mouse cried out with dissatisfaction, yet couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the people around her, and she buried her head in eating. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Yet he didn't know what expression these people that were sighing about his extravagance and squandering would have if they knew that it was this little gold mouse that had helped him earn over 100 million gold. Almost 1 year ago in Black Wind City, he'd precisely relied on the deterrence of the little gold mouse to forcefully extort a large sum of money from the Ma clan and Huang clan. That huge sum of money added up to more than 100 million taels of gold. 100 silver for a table of dishes? Duan Lingtian remained indifferent. 100 taels of silver was equivalent to 1 tael of gold. Compared to the over 100 million gold that the little gold mouse had earned for him, it was simply a drop in the ocean and wasn't worth mentioning. Along with the passage of time, the restaurant was bustling with people, and there were no empty seats. Many people entered the restaurant, and because they didn't have a seat, they could only sigh and leave. Most of these people that left glanced at the little gold mouse that occupied a table by itself with envy and jealousy, and they all felt that their entire lives were inferior to a pet mouse. Duan Lingtian was originally still drinking and eating when a few figures approached, causing him to frown. Duan Lingtian lazily raised his head, and only now did he see a young man in embroidered clothes walking over with two middle-aged men. The young man in embroidered clothes' gaze descended onto the little gold mouse, and he was slightly surprised. "Kid, this is your pet?" Behind the young man in embroidered clothes, one of the middle-aged men took a step forward and looked at Duan Lingtian as he said in a low voice, "Go accompany your pet. Leave this table empty and give it to my young master. This is your reward." The middle-aged man spoke with an overbearing aura as he casually tossed out a gold bill. Right at this moment, Duan Lingtian raised his hand to receive the gold bill, and when he glanced at the denomination on it, he was slightly surprised. 100 gold. Truly generous. Fuck off after taking the money. When he saw Duan Lingtian being surprised by a 100 gold bill, the corners of the middle-aged man's mouth curled into disdain, and he grunted coldly as he shouted in a low voice. Slap. Duan Lingtian's gaze squinted abruptly, and with a raise of his hand, a stack of gold bills appeared in his hand. "This is 10,000 gold. Fuck off after taking the money. Remember, it's really fuck off." As Duan Lingtian spoke, he raised his head to look at the middle-aged man and grinned. His smile was filled with wickedness. "Want to compete in wealth with me? 10,000 gold?" Duan Lingtian's voice wasn't soft, and it attracted many gazes for a moment. In next to no time, when these gazes touched the young man in embroidered clothes, they lightly trembled as if they'd seen something terrifying. Chapter 497. Obviously, the background of this young man in embroidered clothes wasn't simple. However, was Duan Lingtian the type of person that would throw his dignity beneath the feet of another and allow the other party to trample on him because he was afraid of the other party's background? The answer was no. "Kid." The middle-aged man's face sank when he saw Duan Lingtian being so insensible, and he shouted out coldly, "Do you know who my young master is? Let me tell you, my young master isn't someone a lowly commoner like you can offend. If you're sensible, then quickly F***K off. Be careful, or it'll be too late for regret." Too late for regret? Duan Lingtian put away the 10,000 gold in his hand, then glanced indifferently at the middle-aged man with a smile on his face. "Then I'm curious how you'll make me too late for regret." Duan Lingtian's mood was extremely displeased from being disturbed while eating. "Kid, you're courting death." The middle-aged man's face sank as he shouted out explosively. Then his figure leaned forward as his hand descended like a cattail leaf fan, enveloping towards Duan Lingtian with menacing momentum. In the sky above him, 1,500 lifelike ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form. This middle-aged man was obviously a half-step void stage martial artist. Meanwhile, most of the customers in the restaurant that saw this scene couldn't help but shake their heads and sigh, sighing with emotion that Duan Lingtian was too ostentatious and didn't know how to conceal his strength and bide his time, causing him to kick an iron plate in the end. Half-step void stage? The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into an arc when he saw the middle-aged man attacking him, and it contained slight disdain mixed within. Bang! The middle-aged man's palm descended, origin energy coiled and raged, and it carried the might to split mountains and split rocks as it flashed directly towards Duan Lingtian's chest, desiring to blast Duan Lingtian out of the restaurant with a single strike. It's not certain who's courting death. Right at this critical moment, Duan Lingtian spoke with a tone that contained slight laziness mixed within. Subsequently, everyone present noticed to their astonishment. 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes instantly appeared in the sky above the violet-clothed young man that spoke lazily. In the next moment, they saw something. The purple-clothed young man casually raised his hand and grabbed the middle-aged man's hand like an eagle grabbing a chick. Immediately after, "Get down." Duan Lingtian displayed a cultivation that completely suppressed the middle-aged man. After easily grabbing the middle-aged man's hand, he casually threw him out of the window. After the middle-aged man was thrown out, the elemental energy on his body started to wreak havoc. He swayed in the air, as if he was trying to adjust his landing position. Humph! A wisp of disdain appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth, and with a raise of his hand, he pointed out one finger after another. Whoosh! 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 In an instant, strands of pure origin energy condensed into finger force that whistled out and swept towards the middle-aged man. Duan Lingtian held back when he attacked. The middle-aged man came to his senses and didn't dare to act rashly. He allowed his body to fall to the ground in its original state. He knew clearly in his heart that the moment he moved, those elemental energy fingers would mercilessly hit him and penetrate his body. Bang! The middle-aged man, whose body had stiffened and was terrified to the point he broke out in cold sweat, fiercely fell on the street outside the restaurant, and he fell flat on his face and was in an extremely sorry state. As expected, this scene drew the attention of the passers-by. Within the restaurant, after he taught the middle-aged man a lesson, Duan Lingtian didn't even spare a glance at the young man in embroidered clothes and the other middle-aged man. At this moment, the pupils of the young man in embroidered clothes who'd maintained his composure since the beginning couldn't help but constrict, and he glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian. I never imagined that brother is already a void-prying stage martial artist at such a young age. Admirable, admirable. Duan Lingtian paid no attention to the young man in embroidered clothes. The young man in embroidered clothes was slightly embarrassed, and then he squeezed out a trace of a smile on his face. I'm the G Clan's G Feng. I hope brother can forgive my subordinates for offending you earlier. Can you not disturb my meal? Duan Lingtian raised his head and glanced impatiently at Ji Feng. Ji Feng's face froze, then he took a deep breath and didn't get angry. Sorry. I'll leave now. I'll leave now. As he spoke, Ji Feng brought along the other middle-aged man and left the restaurant. The farce ended here. It caused the people in the restaurant to be slightly unsatisfied. I thought that the Ji Clan's young master Feng would take revenge for his subordinate, but I never imagined that he would leave with his tail between his legs. Truly disappointing. In my opinion, this Ji Clan's young master Feng is an intelligent person. This young man's cultivation has already stepped into the void-prying stage at such a young age. Obviously, he's a young genius that was recommended to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy this time. I wonder which power recommended this young genius. This young man looks to be not more than 25 years old. Even if he takes good care of himself, he's probably not more than 30 years old. Such natural talent isn't the slightest bit inferior to the 5 great young masters, yet I've actually never heard of him in the past. The crowd of customers in the restaurant whispered in discussion, and they were all shocked by Duan Lingtian's cultivation. As for Duan Lingtian, he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to these people. Not more than 30 years old? Duan Lingtian felt a wave of speechlessness in his heart. Outside the restaurant, Ji Feng brought along the 2 middle-aged men and left with a calm expression, as if he'd already completely tossed the matter from before to the back of his mind. Young master, that kid is too arrogant. Could it be that we're just going to let it go like this? The middle-aged man that was thrown out of the window by Duan Lingtian earlier had an enraged expression as he gnashed his teeth and spoke. Humph. Ji Feng coldly swept the middle-aged man with his gaze and said indifferently, If you want to go back and teach him a lesson, I won't stop you. But I'll tell you in advance, even if you're killed by him, our Ji clan won't stand up for you. The middle-aged man was instantly muddled when he heard this, and he drooped his head and didn't dare speak again. In the future, don't use force to solve problems so easily. Use your brain more. Ji Feng lectured the middle-aged man. That violet-clothed young man possesses a cultivation at the void-prying stage at such a young age. He's surely one of the young geniuses that was recommended to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy this time. With his strength, it isn't difficult for him to become eminent in the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Even if a person like this can't become a friend, he absolutely can't become an enemy. Moreover, do you think a power that's capable of fostering such a young expert would be simple? As he finished speaking, Ji Feng's tone obviously contained slight fear. Ji Feng's words caused the two middle-aged men to nod repeatedly, and they were sincerely convinced. Especially the middle-aged man that was ranting about his unwillingness earlier. His face was crimson red, and he felt that he'd lived all these years in vain, as he couldn't see things as clearly as his young master. However, he ought to have just arrived at the Imperial City. I reckon he'll go register at the Dragon and Phoenix Academy later. Let's go eat first, then we'll go register at the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. I'm really looking forward to seeing the young geniuses from all over the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Ji Feng's face revealed a smile as he muttered to himself, the others ought to not be as abnormal as that fellow from before, right? Half an hour later, Duan Lingtian and the little gold mouse successively finished sweeping away the dishes and intended to pay the bill and leave. Do you know how to get to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy? Duan Lingtian looked at the attendant and asked. The attendant was extremely respectful and reverent to Duan Lingtian now, and he respectfully guided the way for Duan Lingtian, not daring to be the slightest bit negligent. What a joke. The young man before him was a void-prying stage expert. Although he'd seen many void-prying stage experts, it was still the first time he'd seen such a young one. Moreover, the young man had just thrown out the guard by the side of the Ji clan's young master Feng, and it was awe-inspiring in terms of ferocity. Yes. After he found out about the location of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy, Duan Lingtian nodded, then looked at the gold bill of 100 silver on the table. Take this gold bill to settle the bill, and take the rest as a tip for you. I truly never imagined that someone would treat me to a meal as soon as I arrived at the Imperial City. Duan Lingtian stood up as he spoke, and after the little gold mouse leaped onto his shoulder, he left the restaurant. The 100 gold was precisely the gold left behind by the guard by the side of the Ji clan's young master Feng. Thank you, young master, thank you, young master. The attendant's face flushed red when he heard Duan Lingtian, and he was extremely excited. 100 gold. It was equivalent to 10,000 silver. It was equivalent to his salary for a few tens of years. Under numerous gazes that were filled with envy and jealousy, the attendant took the gold to pay the bill. That young expert really did come for the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. I originally thought that the 5 great young genius representatives of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom heading to the Darkstone Empire 1 year from now would be occupied by the 5 great young masters. Now it would seem that another dark horse has appeared. 5 great young masters? In my opinion, the dark horse of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's younger generation isn't only that young expert from before. Supposedly, the 7-star sword sect that had already been annihilated had a genius disciple that luckily survived, and with that person's natural talent, he's probably already broken through to the void-prying stage now. That 7-star sword sect disciple seems to be called Duan Lingtian, and he'd once successively defeated Saber Young Master and Zither Young Master. Most importantly, his age is far younger than any one of the 5 great young masters. In terms of natural talent, no one in the history of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom is able to surpass him. The group of people in the restaurant discussed animatedly, and their words were filled with admiration towards Duan Lingtian. But even if his natural talent is great, even if he's already broken through to the void-prying stage now, would he dare make an appearance? The Azure Forest Trisect has exhausted all their efforts to find him, wanting to drag him out and kill him. That Duan Lingtian has already caused the Azure Forest Trisect to be in a state of chaos at such a young age. I can imagine that if he's able to survive properly and matures, he'll surely become the nightmare of the Azure Forest Trisect. If I was him, I would lie dormant, and before I matured, I would absolutely not appear before the eyes of the Azure Forest Trisect. I hope he's able to come out. I'm extremely curious, on the path to the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, exactly how far a monstrous genius like him can go. I'm extremely curious as well. Duan Lingtian naturally didn't know that a group of people were discussing him in the restaurant earlier. Chapter 498. Duan Lingtian stood on the empty ground and was able to see many young geniuses walking over successively from all directions, and the space between their brows had slight excitement and arrogance mixed within. So many people? All of them are people recommended by the various powers of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? Duan Lingtian was shocked when he saw so many people. With a quick thought, he came to an understanding. These few days are the last few days for the young geniuses of the various powers to register at the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Many people ought to have only come to register in these few days. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and his gaze descended onto the empty ground before him. There was an arched door in front of them. At the side of the door stood a tall stone tablet, and on the stone tablet were 3 large words that were carved in a flamboyant style: Dragon and Phoenix Academy. These 4 words were carved in one go, and are filled with a peerlessly fierce aura. I presume it was personally carved by an expert. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Presently, there were 3 old men sitting behind a stone table before the arched door, and the stone table was neatly placed with brushes and ink. The young geniuses that gushed over from all directions successively arrived before the table of the 3 old men before withdrawing a certificate and passing it to the 3 old men for inspection. After they inspected it, the 3 old men would complete their registration and give them a command token. The people that obtained the command token excitedly passed through the arched door and walked into the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. There's really many people. Duan Lingtian looked at the 3 long lines before him and couldn't help but shake his head. Then his body slightly leaned forward, intending to line up. Right at this moment, roar. An enormous roar sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears, and it was like a thunderclap. Not only did it alarm Duan Lingtian, even the young geniuses that were lining up couldn't help but turn around to look over. Duan Lingtian turned around. With a single glance, he saw an enormous leopard walking over here, and everywhere it passed, the passers-by would move aside in succession. This leopard's entire body was covered in snow-white fur that seemed like white flames that were burning. Every time it opened its bloody mouth and emitted a low roar, it caused coldness to arise from the bottom of one's heart. Snow leopard? Duan Lingtian was a little surprised. He didn't think that there would be someone using this kind of beast as a means of transportation in the Imperial City. Snow leopard, a 7th-level nascent soul stage, fierce beast. 2 words immediately popped up in his mind. Acting tough. It's the Yin clan's Inja. Inja, the Yin clan's 2nd young master. In terms of natural talent, he's only inferior to the 5 great young masters of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. I've long since heard of him. Since he's able to tame a snow leopard, the strength of this Yin clan's 2nd young master is surely at the 7th level of the nascent soul stage or above. This Yin clan's 2nd young master, Inje, is 29 years old this year, and his cultivation is supposedly already at the 9th level of the nascent soul stage. Many people were whispering, and Duan Lingtian knew the identity of the person who had come. In family? Duan Lingtian raised his eyebrows. He had never heard of this family before, but presumably, it should be a clan from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City, and it wasn't an ordinary small clan. Duan Lingtian was able to discern this from the fearful gazes of many young geniuses. Haha, Inja, you've really come early. Right at this moment, a hearty laughter sounded out. Accompanying this laughter was a shocking roar of a beast. An enormous wolf that was completely covered in black, striped fur appeared. After the enormous wolf appeared, its scarlet-red eyes stared fixedly at the snow leopard, as if it would pounce over and fight it at any moment. Black striped wolf. Many people exclaimed in surprise. Black striped wolf, a 7th-level nascent soul stage fierce beast, and it was even more ferocious than the snow leopard. Another powerful dire beast. Many young geniuses looked enviously at the person on the back of the black striped wolf. Duan Lingtian looked over as well. This was a young man around the age of 30 that wore black clothes. His appearance was ordinary, but an insufferably arrogant expression was emitted from between his brows. Half-step void stage? Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out and detected this person's cultivation at the first possible moment. It's the Sima clan's Sima Yang. This Sima Yang is a genius martial artist of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom as well. In terms of natural talent, he's comparable to Inja and is only inferior to the 5 great young masters. Someone recognized the black-clothed young man and exclaimed in a low voice, "Oomph! Sima Yang, what a coincidence. I can even encounter you while registering." Inja grunted coldly. Obviously, he didn't get along well with Sima Yang. As soon as Inja finished speaking, he didn't pay any further attention to Sima Yang and commanded the snow leopard to continue walking towards the Dragon and Phoenix Academy's entrance. Everywhere it passed, all the young geniuses moved aside. In next to no time, the snow leopard that Inja sat on had arrived before Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian just happened to be standing at the empty space before the entrance. At this moment, Inja had 2 choices. The first was to go around Duan Lingtian's left side. The second was to go around Duan Lingtian's right side. After all, this empty space was extremely spacious. But Inja didn't choose, and instead glanced coldly at Duan Lingtian as he shouted coldly, "Where did this kid that's still wet behind his ears come from? F***K off." Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at Inja, then paid no further attention to him, as if he utterly didn't hear what Inja said. Inja's face sank. Roar! The snow leopard that Inja sat on seemed to have noticed its master's rage, and it roared in a low voice at Duan Lingtian, who was blocking the way. Duan Lingtian frowned, and finally spoke lazily. "The road is so wide. Don't you know how to go around it?" "Go around it?" Inja's already gloomy face couldn't help but reveal a ridiculing smile when he heard Duan Lingtian. "Kid that's still wet behind his ears. Inja, never go around it. If you know what's good for you, then quickly F***K off. Otherwise, I'll make the snow leopard directly press down on you." His words were filled with a threatening intent. Duan Lingtian's calm expression finally sank. "Make the snow leopard press down on me? Does this Inja really think he's a judge that decides life and death? Then I really want to know how you're going to make this snow leopard press down on me." The gloominess on Duan Lingtian's face instantly vanished without a trace, and replacing it was a brilliant smile. Duan Lingtian's words caused Inja to be unable to refrain from frowning. As the Yin clan's second young master and possessing extraordinary natural talent in the martial Tao, it was naturally impossible for him to be an idiot. Presently, there were only 2 possibilities why the violet-clothed young man before him still dared act like this after knowing his identity. Firstly, this was a rash youth that utterly didn't know what status their Yin clan possessed in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial city. Secondly, this was an existence with a shocking background that wasn't afraid of their Yin clan. For a time, he instead hesitated. Roar! Right when Inja was hesitating, another beast roar sounded out. A young man in embroidered clothes sat on an enormous tiger that was completely covered in sky-blue fur as he walked over, and everywhere he passed, the passers-by moved aside. Jifeng, the brows of Sima Yang, who sat on the black striped wolf, raised as he greeted the young man in embroidered clothes. "It's him." Duan Lingtian recognized the person that had arrived. It was precisely the young man in embroidered clothes that he'd met once in the restaurant earlier. At that time, he'd thrown an ignorant follower of the young man in embroidered clothes into the restaurant. He'd originally thought that the young man would stand up for his subordinate. Unexpectedly, the young man had actually left directly. At that time, he knew that the young man was an extremely scheming person, and it was absolutely impossible for the young man to make things difficult for the young man before he found out about the young man's background. A person like this was extremely terrifying. It's the Ji clan's Jifeng. In terms of natural talent, this Jifeng is a figure on par with Inja and Sima Yang. He's only 29 years old, yet his cultivation has already stepped into the 9th level of the nascent soul stage. Many young geniuses recognized Jifeng, Inja, You should obediently take a detour. Haha. Jifeng imperceptibly nodded with a smile to Duan Lingtian. Then he looked at Inja, who rode a snow leopard and stood nearby before Duan Lingtian, and he started laughing loudly. There was no lack of ridicule within his laughter. Obviously, Jifeng and Inja didn't get along well. Sima Yang looked at Inja as well, and a trace of ridicule appeared on the corners of his mouth. Inja, obediently take a detour. Do you really think that the road before the Dragon and Phoenix Academy's entrance belongs to your clan? Humph. Inja was originally still guessing Duan Lingtian's identity and background, but now that he was ridiculed by his two old rivals, his face instantly flushed red and he was enraged to the limit, and he'd completely lost all reason. Kid, I'll give you one last chance. Fuck off. Otherwise, I'll take your life. Inja's icy cold eyes stared at Duan Lingtian as he shouted with a grim voice. At this moment, he'd vented all his rage onto Duan Lingtian. Take my life? Duan Lingtian shook his head and said indifferently, this is a large and empty space, and all the spectating young geniuses can testify that it was I who stood here first. As the saying goes, first come, first serve. I came first, and you came later. Logically speaking, it ought to be you that takes a detour. Now, you're actually taking my life for such a small matter? As Duan Lingtian finished speaking, even though his tone was still calm, his eyes had already flickered with an imperceptible and frightening cold light. Duan Lingtian was enraged. Has this young man gone mad? Does he know who he's talking to? He's a young genius that was recommended to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy as well? He wondered which faction had recommended him. Was there no one else in that faction? A young man like this is able to be recommended to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. He's going to be in trouble. Of course. Inja's temper is famous for being bad. Today, this young man being so unappreciative will surely completely infuriate Inja. The crowd of spectating young geniuses whispered in discussion. Inja, I think this brother is right. Everything has to be done first come, first serve. Right at this moment, Jifeng rode his enormous tiger over slowly, and when he arrived before Duan Lingtian, he went around him before looking at Inja, and the ridicule on his face didn't reduce in the slightest. Jifeng, you're really getting worse and worse. Inja glanced coldly at Jifeng, and then his gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian as he laughed with ridicule. You actually took a detour for a little kid like this? Today, I'll let you see that I, Inja, am able to make this person you took a detour for lie down obediently. As he finished speaking, Inja's tone was filled with ruthlessness. Crush him. Chapter 499. Along with Inja's low shout, the gazes of the group of young geniuses at the entrance of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy were filled with pity as they looked at Duan Lingtian. All of them felt that Duan Lingtian was about to be struck with misfortune. Roar! The snow leopard raised its head and roared explosively with a might that shook the heavens. Its enormous body moved as it charged towards Duan Lingtian. Then it opened its bloody mouth and fiercely bit towards Duan Lingtian. The snow leopard was about to bite Duan Lingtian. Squeak! The fluffy golden fur on the little gold mouse that stood on Duan Lingtian's shoulder instantly stood on end, and it let out a sharp cry that was filled with extreme rage. Right at this moment, an unbelievable scene appeared. Everyone present was dumbstruck when they saw the scene before them. Some people even stretched out their hands to fiercely wipe their eyes, as if they were confirming that they weren't seeing things, along with the little gold mouse's sharp cry. The snow leopard that charged menacingly towards Duan Lingtian instantly stopped on the spot. In the next moment, the snow leopard's enormous body trembled, and it actually directly lay down on the ground and shivered. On the other hand, Inja, who was on the snow leopard's back, was accidentally thrown off by the snow leopard, and he fell onto the ground in a sorry state. Roar! The snow leopard lay on the ground with its head tightly stuck to the ground, and it seemed as if it was a subject that was submitting to the emperor. Squeak, squeak! The little gold mouse stood on Duan Lingtian's shoulder, and it raised its forelimbs like a human and proudly raised its head, as if it was a high and mighty emperor. As a demon beast, so long as it revealed its aura to a ferocious beast, It was sufficient to make the ferocious beast submit in fear. This scene caused everyone to be dumbstruck. A formidable ferocious beast, snow leopard, actually lay down before a pet mouse? It was simply unbelievable. When did snow leopards become so cowardly? Isn't that just a cute pet mouse? It only cried out once. Yet the snow leopard was like a mouse that saw a cat, and it directly lay down? Humph. This snow leopard is really a disgrace to nascent soul-stage ferocious beasts. Many of the spectating young geniuses scoffed at snow leopard's reaction. Only Jifeng and Sima Yang had heavy expressions, and their eyes were filled with fear when they looked at the little gold mouse on Duan Lingtian's shoulder. They knew that the little gold mouse standing on this young man's shoulder was absolutely not a pet mouse. What a joke. Could pet rats make the ferocious beasts under them restless? Earlier, when the little gold mouse emitted that cry that was directed towards the snow leopard, they'd all felt the restlessness of the ferocious beasts beneath them. If it wasn't for them placating the little gold mouse, the ferocious beasts beneath them would have probably already gone mad and fled. Jifeng, you know him? Sima Yang looked at Jifeng and asked via voice transmission. Obviously, he discerned that Jifeng's actions earlier were entirely to induce Inja step by step, to make Inja lose his reason and make a move against that mysterious violet-clothed young man. Not really. I saw him at the restaurant an hour ago. Jifeng shook his head and replied via voice transmission. At the same time, Jifeng looked at Inja, who had a dumbstruck expression and was staring blankly on the ground, and the corners of his mouth curled into a ridiculing smile once more as he added fuel to the fire. Sure enough, like master, like beast slave. Inja, you should apologize to this young brother. In this way, perhaps he'll be magnanimous and forgive your rashness. Beast slave was the name the people of Cloud Continent gave to enslaved ferocious beasts and demon beasts. Of course, a demon beast like the little gold mouse that Duan Lingtian took to be a friend and wasn't enslaved by him couldn't be considered a beast slave. This Jifeng, Duan Lingtian frowned, as he was able to discern that Jifeng wished for the world to be plunged into chaos. As expected, he's a scheming person. Moreover, Duan Lingtian noticed that after Inja heard Jifeng, he quickly recovered from his shock, and when he looked at Duan Lingtian, his eyes were filled with ruthlessness and shame. There are some people you can't afford to offend. When he saw Inja showing signs of flaring up, Duan Lingtian spoke indifferently. Kid, you're courting death. Inja shouted out explosively, and his voice was filled with extreme rage. Swoosh. At the same time, Inja's figure shook, and he seemed to have transformed into a cannonball that directly charged towards Duan Lingtian. It wasn't just that, as Inja's figure flashed out, his right hand formed into a fist as his origin energy skyrocketed, and he flashed out with a target that directly pointed towards Duan Lingtian's chest. Whoosh! In the sky, 1,200 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form and dashed out along with Inja. Obviously, Inja had attacked out of extreme rage, and he'd exploded out with all his strength. Pig-headed, Duan Lingtian never imagined that after the snow leopard was intimidated to the point it lay down, Inja still dared attack him, and his face instantly sank as cold lights shot out from his eyes. At the same time that he shouted out coldly, Duan Lingtian moved. Tempest Point. With a raise of his hand, Duan Lingtian pointed out with his finger, and he didn't even use wind force or lightning force. Only a point force condensed from pure origin energy whistled out to intercept Inja's fist that approached menacingly. Swish! An ear-piercing howl abruptly sounded out. The point force that was condensed from the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths easily broke open the origin energy on Inja's fist, and it easily touched Inja's fist. Poochie! Duan Lingtian's origin energy point force pierced into Inja's fist as if it had pierced into tofu. At the instant that a small hole was pierced on Inja's fist by the origin energy point force and fresh blood splattered out, Inja's shrill cry sounded out, and it was extremely miserable. Subsequently, Inja stretched out his other hand and tightly held onto his right hand that was dripping with blood. At this moment, Inja's body shivered as cold sweat flowed out. No, impossible. Inja ceaselessly shook his head as he looked at the 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes that gradually dispersed above Duan Lingtian, and he wasn't willing to believe that all this was true. This young man that looked to be not more than 25 years old was actually a first-level void-prying stage expert. After Inja, who'd used his origin energy to stop the bleeding with great difficulty and had an extremely pale countenance, clearly noticed his injuries, his face went grim and became exceedingly savage. You crippled my hand. You crippled my hand. The Een clan won't let you off. The Een clan won't let you off. Inja's voice contained traces of trembling mixed within, because he noticed that his right hand was completely crippled. Duan Lingtian's origin energy point force had easily crippled 2 of his finger bones, and it didn't lose momentum in the slightest as it drilled into his arm bones and completely minced his bone marrow. Now, even if he had a grade 4 great recovery pill, it was impossible for his hand to recover. Duan Lingtian's gaze was calm when faced with Inja, who had a savage and warped expression, and he said indifferently, "Before you made a move, I'd already told you. There are some people you can't afford to offend. If you offend them, then you have to pay the price." Inja's face flushed red, and only now did he recall that Duan Lingtian had indeed said this. But at that time, he was furious to the extreme. So how could he possibly listen to Duan Lingtian? He only thought that Duan Lingtian was deliberately mystifying him. "You're dead, you're dead." Inja glanced hatefully at Duan Lingtian. Then he leaped onto the back of the snow leopard that lay on the ground, and he looked at the snow leopard and shouted coldly, "Get up. Do you think you haven't lost enough face?" But the snow leopard utterly paid no attention to him, and it lay on the ground by itself as it shivered when facing the aura of a demon beast emitted by the little gold mouse. Useless trash. Inja's expression was unsightly to the extreme when he saw the snow leopard paying no attention to him, and he raised his left hand to reveal a spirit saber. Oem! The spirit saber descended and directly pierced into the snow leopard's head, killing it. Perhaps, even until its death, the snow leopard never imagined that its owner would suddenly kill it. "I won't let you off." Absolutely not. Inja once again used a vicious gaze to glance at Duan Lingtian. At this moment, he seemed to have transformed into a highly venomous crimson serpent that chose its target to devour. Subsequently, Inja's figure flashed out to leave the entrance of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy, and he vanished at the end of the road. Obviously, he'd returned to the Een clan. Duan Lingtian paid no attention to Inja's threat. Een clan? In the past, the 5 great sects reigned supreme in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and besides the imperial family of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, there wasn't a single clan that could compare with any one of the 5 great sections. Presently, 2 of the 5 great sects had been annihilated successively, and the remaining 3 great sects had merged into one to form a formidable power that wasn't inferior to the imperial family. Azure Forest Trisect? The Azure Forest Trisect undoubtedly wished for nothing more than to eliminate Duan Lingtian, the surviving member of the 7-star sword sect, as soon as possible. Duan Lingtian, daring to stand here today, represented that he was mentally prepared to face the Azure Forest Trisect. He wasn't even afraid of the Azure Forest Trisect, so would he be afraid of Een clan? After Inja left, Duan Lingtian returned to his senses and intended to line up to register. Presently, everywhere Duan Lingtian passed, all the young geniuses moved aside, and in the end, they moved him to the front and allowed him to register first. No matter where an expert went, they were able to obtain the respect of others and obtain some special privileges. Void Prying Stage. He's actually a Void Prying Stage expert. At this moment, besides Ji Feng, the group of young geniuses, including Sima Yang, looked at Duan Lingtian with gazes that were filled with shock and astonishment. A young man that looked to be not more than 25 years old had a cultivation at the first level of the Void Prying Stage. Such an accomplishment caused everyone to be extremely shocked. Ji Feng, you knew since long ago? Sima Yang looked at Ji Feng, and when he saw Ji Feng lightly nodding, the corners of his mouth twitched. You've really screwed Inja over this time. Inja has crippled one of his hands, and I'm afraid he has no fate with those few positions to head to the Darkstone Empire. Along with Sima Yang speaking, the gazes of most young geniuses descended onto Ji Feng, and they felt a chill run down their spines. If it was said that the violet-clothed young man that crippled Inja's hand was a formidable fierce tiger that was capable of destroying everything in a direct confrontation, then Ji-Feng was a poisonous snake. Then this Ji-Feng was a venomous snake that killed without leaving a trace. The latter caused them to be even more shocked. With a few words, he crippled the number one genius of the Yin clan's younger generation. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.